I'm Anne Greenwood. I'm the Lancashire and South Cumbria General Practice Lead, but also I've got a new role as Primary Care Digital First Lead. So I'm now working with the ICS digital team and have quite a focus supporting primary care in using technology differently. Okay. So housekeeping, there are toilets at the back of the room and also through the medieval banquet suite if you go straight through, and then on your left. We're not expecting any fire drills today, or fires for that matter, but if the alarm should go off, there's fire doors at the back, at both sides, and at the front. So the 3 front doors, the meeting place is on car park 6, and for the back door, it's on car park 3, should the alarm go off. Hopefully, we've got an exciting range of presentations for you, and also the workshops this afternoon that we hope you'll gain a lot from and be able to take that information back to your practices to do something differently. And that's what it's all about, innovation, working differently and moving forward. We've got a range of market stands, and hopefully you've had time to visit those, but there'll be time at lunchtime. And please do collect a bag with some goodies in that you can also add to, but take one for your colleagues back at your base if you want, because there are plenty, and we don't want to take them back with us. On the car park, there should also be the Harry bus from Lancashire Care Foundation Trust. We're expecting them to come as well. So during the morning, I'll check whether they've arrived or not. Okay, so no more to do. If I can introduce Karen Story, please, who's our National Primary Care Nursing Lead.
Great. Fabulous. Okay. Can you see that screen? Great. And you can hear me. Okay, so you've probably all got very comfortable now. So I'm going to ask you to get on your feet. Get on your feet, everybody. Okay. I want you to put your hands by your side and shake them, like this. And then I want you to repeat after me. General practice nurses are brilliant. Healthcare assistants are brilliant. Okay, you can sit down. I really want you to believe that, because that is the case, okay? So I'm Karen Story. I'm Primary Care Nursing Lead at NHS England, NHS Improvement. And I'm delighted to be here because this is the 3rd year that I've been here, which I can't believe. I cannot believe, looking back, reflecting on those 3 years, how far we've come. How far have we come in those 3 years? So if I think back to that first year when I came, when I was in post, promoting and delivering the General Practice Nursing 10-point plan, when I asked rooms, audiences, had they heard of the 10-point plan, there was hardly any hands in the room that went up. I'm sure if I asked that question today, there'd be 100% of hands going up in the room. But I'm not going to ask that question today. I'm going to ask you a different question. Okay? So show of hands, who in the audience is comfortable with calling themselves a leader? 1, 2, 3, a few hands. So it's really interesting because in my job as primary care nursing lead, I travel up and down the country and I ask audiences, mainly of general practice nurses, I usually ask them that question. And I usually get the same response. Hardly any hands in the room go up. And what I've started to do is get really curious about that because I keep getting that response. So I've started thinking about this thing, leadership. When we talk about leadership, I think what we've done is made it into something bigger than it actually is, something that's bigger than us. And if we think about the title of leader, we called ourselves a leader, we might think that we're being a bit big-headed or a bit cocky and sure of ourselves. So we don't do it. And we think one day we might aspire to it and hopefully we might become a leader, but we're very reluctant to call ourselves a leader now. And actually, with this word leader, we think it's only something that heads of organisations can be, or people that actually do great things like put a man on the moon or climb a mountain. But actually, by doing that and celebrating those fabulous things that everybody does, we've stopped valuing the everyday things that we do as leaders in our practice, and we've started to undervalue and devalue what leadership really is. So I want you to think about that. So I've worked with some really fabulous people over the last 10 years, and they've taught me to think differently about leadership. And for me, if you can see that, this is what leadership is. So it's not about titles, it's not about positions or flowcharts. It's about one life influencing another. I really like that. Because as nurses, general practice nurses, healthcare assistants, this is what we do every day in our practice. When we have conversations with patients, when we help them make the right decisions for themselves, we're influencing. That's what we're doing. And we're leading. So have a think about that. So, whoops, if I can get the technology right. I wanted to just share with you a little bit about my leadership journey. So I'm glad you can't see that very close now because it's a very small picture. But I started as I was a newly qualified, a student back in the 80s. And we did things differently back in the 80s, as you can see, sitting on beds and having photographs with patients. Things were quite different then. But I never really thought about my career when I was a student. I never thought that I'd be in this position today as National Primary Care Nursing Lead. I didn't have a plan, and I didn't have an idea of how I was going to get there, if I did think about that. And one of the great things about, and the great opportunities, although I didn't realise at the time, was that as a newly qualified nurse, I went straight into general practice. And I think the reason why I did that is because I had a placement as a student in the community. And I knew at that point that I didn't want to work in a hospital. I wanted to work outside. So when an opportunity came to work in general practice as a newly qualified nurse, even then, back in the 80s, I thought, I'm going to do that. So I did that. And I worked in lots of GP practices up and down the country, even outside of the country. And I worked in some good practices, and I worked in some challenging, not so good practices. But actually, the lessons that I learned from working in some of those practices are actually very valuable to me today, because I actually reflect on those experiences to help me in my work today. And in one of those practices that had a fabulous ethos around education and training, I really excelled. I did my first academic study, I did a degree in autonomous practice, set up a nurse triage clinic, but very quickly I reached a ceiling to my development in the practice because there wasn't anywhere else to go. I couldn't go any further. And sadly, I had to leave general practice in order to take up a leadership role outside of general practice, but still in primary care, in an NHS walk-in centre, where in that organisation, as the clinical lead, I was able to do my first, I did my master's programme, I did independent nursing prescribing, did a first clinical leadership programme. Things were really taking off for me. And actually, I think at that point, that really helped me then accelerate the rest of my career, because I went on to take up roles as primary care nurse facilitator in a PCT at the time, in a CCG, and then took up a role in Health Education England because I started to get curious and interested about the workforce. Because even back then, we had some real challenges and issues around the workforce. And I spotted that, but actually it was very difficult then to get the momentum and get other people behind me to actually see what the issues were. But there was a real opportunity within that role to influence national policy, and that's what I did. So being part of those national documents at the time that led to the General Practice Nursing 10-point plan, there was an opportunity then to shape and influence general practice nursing using my experiences from my own personal journey in order to make general practice nursing what it is today. And that led to this role as the National Primary Care Nursing Lead in Ruth May's team, in the Chief Nursing Officer for England's team. And there are real opportunities now because we have the support and the profiling and ensuring that general practice nursing is part of Ruth's team going forward. And I just wanted to plug my latest venture, which is to write a book. So I never thought I'd do that, but actually I can tell you how that happened a bit later on in my presentation. But a book on collaborative practice, something that's really dear to me, something that I value, because it's not about just one profession or one person. This is about a collaboration. This is about multi-professional. This is about how we sustain general practice. And so collaboration is the key to primary and community care, and that's what the book was about. So, don't want to touch too much on what's happened with the 10-point plan, because I know that you're all delivering it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the confidence and we wouldn't be able to see what's happening around the country. Because we can see that the General Practice Nursing 10-point plan has gathered momentum and is delivering some great things. And what we do nationally is that we have an allocation of funding, that 15 million that came as part of the GP Forward View 3 years ago. We've been spending that on your behalf centrally to do some big spread and scale projects. And one of those is actually here today, the digital health work. So we've commissioned that centrally. We've ensured that it's through in all of the 7 regions, and that there is a momentum there that digital, because it is the answer to the future. It's one of those big game changers that's going to make a real difference in the future. We've ensured that we've spread that across the country. And there are lots of other examples of what we've done within the 10-point plan, and you can have a look at that when you get the slides. But we still have much work to do, because the picture, the data that's available, the picture that's showing us and telling us what general practice nursing is looking like across the country hasn't changed much. We still have that bell-shaped curve, and the majority of nurses are sitting in the peak of the curve there, between the ages of 50 to 60, really. And 56% of nurses are over 50, and only 9% are under 35. So that tells you that we still have quite a lot of work to do in order to get that real mix of ages within the profession. And it's still a very part-time workforce, because you can see here in the graph here that the blue areas are the head count and the purple areas are the full-time equivalent. So it's still showing us that it's still a very much part-time workforce. And if you could see those numbers, just look at the lines, because the top line is all nurses in general practice across the country, and you can see for the first time, it's been quite a steady line all the way along, but recently it's dipped a bit. And that's something we need to keep an eye on, because we're looking then at the next quarter data to see whether that actually recovers or whether it continues like that, because again, that's something that we need to take notice of. So why am I talking about data? Because data is really powerful. Data is really important. And actually at the Q&I, Community Observatory launch on Monday, there was a really fabulous quote which struck a chord with me, which actually said, without data, what did it say? Without data, it's just another conversation. You know, we need data. We need to start evidencing what we do. And I know that sounds a bit scary for some, but actually it is really powerful. But I'm going to tell you how you can get hold of that data in a moment. But basically, what this slide shows, that in your region, actually you're doing quite well in terms of nursing numbers. You've done well since we recorded the baseline back in 2015. And actually, it's just teetered off a little bit, but generally you're doing well compared to the rest of the country. And I've pulled out some more data as well, so you can actually see how well you're doing per CCG. Okay, and you can have a look at that later. So there are some real hotspots in the area where you need to focus some of your energy, and less so in others. And a lot of things affect why those nursing numbers are like that. It's quite complex. And in terms of student placements, you're doing well too, because we've been able to look at some of the areas of the country that aren't doing quite so well. I don't know what, they're doing fabulous things in Yorkshire. I mean, 11,000 placements for students is fabulous. You're not doing too bad, I think you're about third in there in terms of placements for students. Some areas that are not even getting off the ground. Still a great deal of work to do. So all of this stuff, if you want it, is at your fingertips. By registering with this site, this is our general practice nursing single point site. So anything that we've done over the last 3 years in terms of developing and investing all of that money in resources is on this site. And the induction framework that the Q&I worked with us on to develop is on that site. And we've got hyperlinks, actually, to the site as well. So if you go to one site, for example, the Q&I, you'll get a hyperlink back to this site. And all of the resources are on that site, including the workforce data that I've just been talking about. So if you need that data, you don't even have to analyze it. We've got somebody that does that for us. So they've made it into meaningful data for you. All you need to do is take it off there and use it to influence. So why do we need this leadership? Why do we need leadership? We all know about the long-term plan, the long-term vision for the next 10 years for the NHS and healthcare as a whole. Everything is changing. We've got to do things differently because what we're currently doing isn't working and it's not sustainable. So this is why there's a lot of churn in the system. That's why we have to do things differently, and things are feeling different for everybody. And of course, primary care networks. Who here is involved in their primary care network? 2. Okay, what about the rest of you? 3, 4. What about the rest of you? Are you involved in the primary care networks? Yeah? No? Why aren't you involved in the primary care networks? These are the questions that we need to ask. Because if we talk about multidisciplinary team working in its truest sense, that means nursing as well, surely, as well as the physios and the paramedics and all the other new roles that are coming around. Nurses, where's nursing in that space? Now, we have recognised that and we're doing something about it. And actually, we've got 7 road shows that we're taking around the country to engage nurses in the development of primary care networks, to understand primary care networks, to be involved in primary care networks, and to play their part in leading in primary care networks. So if you haven't heard about that yet, there will be one coming to your region quite soon. If you have already been engaged in that, it was great to see you there. But actually what we need to do is more work to engage general practice nurses and healthcare assistants in primary care networks. For the opportunities of working this way, delivering the long-term plan, working in primary care networks, some great things can come out of it. One of those has been seeing our first executive nursing leaders in general practice nursing. So of the 2,500 primary care networks, there are 16 nurse clinical directors. Now, we found them through Twitter. This is how powerful Twitter is. So one weekend, just after the launch of primary care networks, we heard from 2 nurse clinical directors, Ben and Andrea. And I picked them up on Twitter. Hilary Garrett was on Twitter as well as the deputy chief nurse. And we had a conversation with people about becoming a clinical director. And then we heard from other nurses who didn't know anything about primary care networks and didn't know anything about the possibility of being a clinical director as a nurse. And we had a conversation, and that led to a national event in London where we had a roundtable discussion around what were the challenges for nurses around being involved in primary care networks. And as a consequence of that, the result was to take 7 roadshows. So the roadshows I'm talking about, we've taken around the country to have a conversation with nurses around primary care networks. And that's going to happen in the next 6 months. As a result of those workshops, we'd like to produce a local action plan that will go back to the STP, the ICS, whoever we can engage in that, and the primary care networks, to have that discussion, to have an action plan about how we can involve nurses in the primary care networks development. And there are some great opportunities. When we talk about leadership, we're not talking about one person being the lead in an organisation, the clinical director. We're talking about everybody playing their part, because we all do great things. And that will make the success of the primary care networks. Lots of other opportunities about maximising the workforce, new roles, nursing associate roles, and applying that multidisciplinary team approach to the workforce. And some really exciting things. I know it's very, very difficult to see that, but I'm going to read them out actually because it's quite important that you hear this. Some of the great things that have happened in the last few months since Ruth's appointment as Chief Nursing Officer for England, she has given her backing to general practice nursing, and she's very vocal about that. And one of the things that she has done in her announcement of the £1,000 CPD for every nurse, midwife and AHP in the country, she ensured that general practice nursing was included in that. And actually, she tweeted me, she contacted me on Twitter to say, general practice nursing is included in that. So that's a very clear message, because that £1,000 CPD money is your money. It's not going to the GPs, it's going to you. Now, how we work that out is still being discussed. The likelihood is it will probably go to the training hubs. So if you don't know who your training hub is, I suggest that you get to know them pretty quickly, because they might hold the money, but the money still belongs to you. It's your £1,000 CPD money for the next 3 years. Now, if you want to spend that on yourself, that's great. But if you want to pool it and collaborate and get more money, get more buck for your money, you can do that. But nurses need to have that conversation, and they need to be part of that conversation. So you need to start asking about that. Retention is a big issue. So we've launched this week a national primary care general practice nursing retention program. So we're working with 5 pilot sites around the country, ICSs and STPs, to develop their own general practice nursing retention strategy. And there are lots of things that we can do to look at how we might retain those nurses that we keep talking about might leave in the next 5 to 10 years. We need to be doing some great work and thinking outside the box about how we might retain nurses, whether that's through portfolio careers, extended careers in digital or research or education or mentoring or teaching, whatever. Now's the time to start thinking about what you can do if you really want to stay in general practice nursing. And the clinical directors, those 16 clinical directors have had an invite to the Chief Nursing Officers Summit in March. That takes our executive leaders into that forum of Ruth Summit in March. And some other great things, a dedicated job site on the NHS jobs platform, a dedicated site for general practice nursing on the NHS platform. So if you look at NHS jobs, you can go directly to the general practice nursing site, and we're hoping that GPs will then have the confidence to put job adverts on that site, that nurses will go to that site to think about where they can get a job in the country. Clinical supervision, that's another project that is going to launch next year. So we recognise that working in isolation is a real challenge for general practice nurses. Coming to events like this is brilliant because you get to talk to each other, you get to share experiences. That's what we want to try and do through a digital platform. And the Time for Care programme. Who's been on a Time for Care Quality Improvement Study Day? Yeah, 1 or 2. That is a fabulous offer. Again, funded through the 10-point plan. The Time for Care programme, a quality improvement programme, it's absolutely fabulous at bringing people together to teach them quality improvement methodology to then take back to their practice. And one of the great things about that programme that I'm seeing is that the opportunity to have an insight into self, which we've never done, I think, as general practice nurses. We've never had the opportunity to look at ourselves professionally to see how we operate and how we function and how we function within our teams. It helps you to understand the people you're working with and the teams you're working in. So that's a great thing to look out for. And the core capabilities framework. So advanced clinical practice is something we know that is where we need to get everybody to, but how you get there as an advanced nurse practitioner is a challenge. So what we've done, we've developed some core capabilities framework. We were hoping to launch that on the 14th of November, but sadly, because of PERDA, that's the period leading up to the election where you're restricted in what you're able to launch and talk about. We haven't been able to launch that yet, but it will happen in January. And the Rosalind Franklin Leadership Programme. So that's our national offer for leadership for nurses at a mid-level in a CCG, in their practices, in their primary care networks that really want to step up into that next level. So that will be open for recruitment in January, and that's a bespoke programme. So there's two on the offer at the moment. One of them is specifically for general practice nursing. We've put a wraparound element to that programme because we recognise that there are particular cultural beliefs and behaviours that general practice nurses have that need to be addressed in order for them to truly lead in that space. And then just finally, one more offer to look out for. So the fellowship that was talked about in the long-term plan. You can read in the long-term plan, it talks about a fellowship for newly qualified nurses in general practice and new GPs in practice. At the moment, the brakes have been put on that because of further discussions that need to be had. But the money around those new to practice programs or fellowships has gone to the primary care networks. And then a letter will be coming out in the next couple of weeks to give them some information about how they can spend the money that's already gone out there. And it will probably be spent on things like induction, preceptorship, education programs, the fundamentals program that is there for general practice nurses. But the program itself, the New to Practice program, which is a 2-year wraparound preceptorship offer for newly qualified nurses, will come into being from April next year. And the leadership offers. Have we got any student nursing ambassadors in the audience? Quite often they pop up. No? What about student nurses? Any student nurses in the audience? Yes. Fabulous. Welcome. You are the future. You're our next generation of general practice nurses, so we need to look after you and nurture you. And if you're interested and you're really passionate about general practice, you could become an ambassador. So we've got 32 student nursing ambassadors who've had a fabulous placement in practice. They want to tell everybody about it, and we have recruited them to the programme to go out and bust those myths around you can't gain your competencies in general practice. They bust those myths in the universities, and they bust those myths in secondary care where other nurses tell them that they can't gain their competencies in general practice. So that's a really great thing that we've done around leadership. The Rosalind Franklin I've already mentioned, and our clinical directors programme. So we've put all of our clinical directors who are nurses on a system leadership programme to give them some skills very quickly in order for them to be able to own their space in this new arena. And leadership in primary care networks needs a different approach because, as I said, it's a different approach now. It's about collaborative working. It's about coming together as a team to work for your population. So it needs a different approach. It needs an enabling approach, an empowering approach, different to what we've had previously. So how ready are you to do all of this? Yeah? Because nobody else is going to do it for us. We've got to be able to do it. And it's about action. As I've said, it's not about position. And I think this is a really good message for you to think about, have some time reflecting on it, because actually it is very chaotic out there. It's quite complex. And we're all going to be thinking, well, how can we do this? How am I feeling about it? All of this change, what's happening? But I think this is a really good message that if we can't adapt and adopt the change and change ourselves to get with it, then we're going to get left behind. So I promised you that I would give you some top tips on some really great things that have happened for me and some things that I really value. And so I have had very few positions of authority in my career. I don't manage anybody. I work in a team, a virtual team, but I can't tell anybody what to do. My work is around influencing. And one of the things that I've come across recently is in order to influence, you have to be able to change people's views and lock into their values. And one of the ways you can do this is through storytelling. So back in the beginning of my presentation, I told you a story of me. Now, all of us have a story of us and our journeys. and you have stories about your interactions every day with patients, you have that privilege to have those encounters with patients. Not everybody else does in the system. And that's a really powerful position to be in. And if you can learn to craft those stories around those experiences with patients, your experiences as a nurse working in general practice, and you can tell them to others, it's a really good way of changing their views, winning their hearts and minds, and influencing. And there's a reference there. If you want to look it up and look at the theory behind that, it's there too. The other one is about networks. Now, I love Twitter. Who else is on Twitter? Fabulous. So you're going to get first-hand information about the latest developments and the latest changes that are happening around the country, because Twitter is a really good medium, not just for having conversations and building networks and collaborating with others. It's really good for CPD, because all of the latest information is posted there. It's at your fingertips, so you can get hold of this stuff before anybody else can that's not on Twitter. Now, I apply 3 rules to Twitter, so if you're worried about being on Twitter, I always apply positive. I only tweet positive stuff, professional stuff, and I never tweet with a glass of wine. Disastrous. Keep yourself safe, but use it. Don't be afraid of it, because it can open doors, it can open opportunities. And the other one is this. Have many of you heard of this? Impostor syndrome. I don't call it imposter syndrome anymore. I call it imposter moments, because syndrome implies that it's there, it's a permanent state, when in fact, it's a temporary situation. Okay? So we all have it in us. There are those inner voices going on all the time, telling us we can't do, we can't be, we're not good enough. Everybody has it. It doesn't have to be that way. When you recognize that and you manage it, you tame it. I call mine my lizard voice. A little lizard sits on my shoulder, tells me I can't do this, I can't speak to audiences, they may not like me, might not be good enough. All of that, it happens to all of us. But actually, if you can get over that, and then you can start being more confident, the world's your oyster. Okay, so have a look at that. And this one, we all did it this morning first off, didn't we? When you do that, it changes the physiology of your body. It decreases cortisol and it increases testosterone. And that changes our bodies and changes our minds so that we become more confident and less anxious. So it's really important. Have a look at it. And there are various other things that you can do to adopt those power poses. This one, hands on your hips, various things. So if you really want to have those challenging, difficult conversations with people, go in the loo, do a quick power pose, off you go. Your physiology of your body is changed. Amy Cuddy, a Harvard professor, really good video on YouTube if you want to have a look at it. It's really, really interesting. So it is all about attitude, isn't it? And we all have a choice. We all have a choice about how we turn up here today, whether it's going to be a great day or whether it's going to be a not so great day. But actually, it is all within all of us to change that. And it's the same for work. You put into things, you get out of things what you put into them. But think about, how are you viewing things at the moment? Are you a glass half full or a glass half empty person? What could you do to change that? And for all of you that are courageous leaders that are out there trying to make a difference, remember that it's not always possible to make a change straight off. Sometimes it takes years. It's taken 3 years for me to see the difference that the 10-point plan has made. In that first year, I had a panic. I thought, we've got this fabulous plan. There's an offer, there's money. Why aren't people engaging in it? But gradually, change has happened. People are more engaged, and now we're getting momentum, and we're seeing a real difference. And remember that the inventor of WD-40 was called WD-40 for a reason, because there were 39 prototypes that actually failed to get to that magic formula. So it isn't always possible to make that change immediately. And this one, changing our narrative. We hear all the time, I'm just a nurse. Got to stop. You are a very important member of the health profession. You have skills, you are a nurse, and you're unique in that role. And you have to help the system understand how important that is. And this final one, so it's about taking action. This is a call to action. All of these events we come to, all of the events we speak at, it's about enabling nurses to get behind what we're trying to do. One person in a national team, one person in another organisation can't make change happen. We need your help. This is about everybody playing their part. So if we're waiting for somebody else to come along and solve it for us, it ain't going to happen. It's got to happen within all of us. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a great day. And I'm here right to the end, to the award ceremony. I'm really looking forward to presenting awards and seeing all of those winners. But remember, everybody is a winner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karen. And it's thanks to you all. We wouldn't be in the position that we are, and, seeing how green Lancashire and South Cumbria is in terms of workforce, and it's because of the leaders that we've got within the CCGs. If you're in the audience and you don't know who your CCG lead is or your primary care network lead nurse, please let me know and we'll seek them out, because there's plenty here today. And we've had the network running for the last year, and it is down to the commitment and the hard work of those nurses that is making that real difference in Lancashire and South Cumbria. So thank you all as well from me. It really is fabulous. And some of the things that Karen has talked about those wraparound new to practice programs. We've been ahead of the curve as well. Some of the bids that we've put forward and been funded for, the preceptorship, the work for the Fundamentals 2 practice programs, they've all been funded. We heard about the 10-point plan, we grabbed it, we ran with it, and we've implemented a lot of those things. And it is showing now, so thanks to everybody. Okay, so our next guest speaker is Talib Yassin. He's Executive Director for Transformation for Lancashire and South Cumbria ICS. Okay, thank you.
Good morning. I thought I was never going to get here this morning. I'd forgot. It's maybe 12 years since I was here. And I said to somebody on the way, I think it would be easier to get to Kathmandu. I thought I was never going to get from the motorway to here. So I'm sure you had a similar journey, some of you. So anyway, I was in a bit of a panic. So my name's Talib Yassin. I'm the Director of Transformation for the Integrated Care System. I'm going to give you some background about what that is and how some of our structures are emerging, because it's really important, building on what Karen said. If you don't know about some of these structures, you're not going to be able to influence what happens. And we are interested in you influencing what happens. So I'll talk a bit about that. So just quickly, building on what Karen said, how many healthcare assistants in this room? Just put your hands up. Great. How many practice nurses? Probably the rest. Okay. Other people who didn't put their hand up for either. Okay. Oh, nurse associate. Brilliant. Okay. Say that again. Brilliant. So there's lots of opportunities. So going back in the history, I started as a cadet nurse in 1978. Don't tell me you weren't alive. I'm not interested in that. And then I was a healthcare assistant for about 4 months before I could start my nurse training. And those two experiences, I believe, have been really formative in my nurse career. Because first of all, when I was a cadet nurse, people thought I was a mortuary technician because there'd never been a male cadet nurse, and you had a very similar a uniform with a colour on that looked very similar to the colour that was on the shrouds in the old days. So people thought I was actually a mortuary technician. But when you've been a healthcare assistant and you've been at that level, you also see some of the challenges in our system. Nursing's a wonderful profession. I've always been amazed that I get paid for it every month, whether I was a student nurse, whether I was a staff nurse, that somebody actually pays you for doing something that you really, really love. So although I'm here as Director of Transformation, I bring a lot of my background, baggage and passion, I think, to that agenda. One of the big challenges we have in Lancashire and South Cumbria is, I keep saying, we don't really do transformation in lots of ways. We're really almost in the business of rescue because we've got such a challenge in our system. That doesn't mean to say there isn't amazing things going on. I spent 7 years working abroad up until March 2018 before I came back. There is no history of practice nursing in, say, the Middle East, where I worked for 7 years. And that applies in many other places. So some of the things that we have, even though we might be frustrated, they are amazing vehicles for change. And sometimes we don't realise the beauty of what we have. And I think what Karen's also saying is, especially you in primary care, where it can be more fragmented, it's not always as easy to connect, but I think primary care networks and neighbourhoods will help. It's about creating that social movement for change. And you see stuff and hear stuff about what works and what doesn't work for patients and people that we serve. You need to feed that in, because that's the stuff we need to change. So when I go to my GP practice, I don't actually believe there are any GPs in it. I think there's some sort of fraudulent scam going on. I've seen the healthcare assistant and I've seen the practice nurse. And I probably couldn't tell you which one is which, other than they have a badge on. And they're great. So I go in, you need to have this, they do it on time and I leave. It's great. I've never seen the GP. I think there's two. I think there's a picture of them, but I've never physically seen them. But I know they are responding to other patients who need that service. So what I also see is massive transformation. So when you go to your GP, it's often a lot easier to access things now. You can go on the app, you can order your meds, you don't always have to phone the practice and you don't always have to go. We need to get some of that innovation that you're all supporting into some of our hospitals, so that they're doing that. It isn't just a primary care thing, and I'm sure Declan might talk about this later. It's about transforming what we do. So I've got some boring slides, which I'm going to whiz through, because they're about how we're organised, and I want you to understand that, and I'm sure Anne and others will explain if you don't. So I want to talk a bit about our vital signs. I thought I'd talk about temperature, pulse, respiration, and blood pressure. So the patient may be in a sort of acute shock syndrome if we apply it to our system. Some context. What are these new partnership structures? And one of the things I've learned about working in partnership is people say they want to do it, but they only want to do it if they can have their own way. And it's not about having your own way. It's about how do we work together better, irrespective of where we sit, to do something better for the patients that we serve. So does anybody in this room think they could do better than they're doing now in what you're offering? I do, but I'd say that in the context of we're in a really tough place in lots of places, but I still think we can do better. We're still not well enough connected. We're still not making the connections. We're still wasting money. We're still offering things that probably don't make any difference. About a year ago, I was supposed to go and see cardiology in Carlisle. It was snowing like crazy. I couldn't even get out of the village. So I rang them and said, look, there's no way I'm going to get there today, because it's snowing like mad. I don't think it's worth taking the risk. We can give you another appointment in 14 weeks. 14 weeks, I could be dead by then. The lovely lady said, we could all be dead by then, love. Totally get that. I said, is there any chance I could just speak to the nurse practitioner? No, we don't do that here. I said, but why not? Why can't I just speak to the nurse on the phone? I'm not coming in for any tests. I knew somebody who worked there because I used to work there, so I had to tweet them and say, is there any chance you could get them to ring me? Eventually, after about 3.5 hours, but only because I know some of the people I know, the nurse rang me. We had the consultation on the phone. I said, you should drop the charge. You are doing a consultation. I'm just not there with you. And she said, I'll also send you a copy of the letter and send it to the GP. Marvellous. Why did it have to be snowing for that to happen? Doesn't make any sense. So we can do better than we're doing across all our sectors, and I'll come back to some of that later. We are in a tough place in lots and lots of ways. So we've got massive pressures on workforce. We've got real challenges with access and waiting times, getting people a diagnosis, doing tests, and getting people their operations when they need it. So we are in a tough place, but I think there's case for optimism. Some of you may not know the American poet, Mary Oliver. She's quite amazing. If you don't know her, look her up online. There's some great videos. But here is the thing. What I want in my life is to be willing to be dazzled, to float above things. I recognise it's tough. I don't think, the whole of my career, it's ever been easy. Doesn't matter whether you work in hospital, wherever it's never been easy. There's always been challenges. We don't have enough of this. It's just the same in the US. We're not sure we have the right staff. We're not sure they're doing the right things. We're not sure we're being flexible enough. Can we recruit enough people with the right skills? They're worldwide issues. It's not unique to the Northwest or the UK. It's happening all around the world. And it's the same conversation. And there are lessons to learn from other places. But that optimism, you're part of the solution, just as Karen said. And what I hope you take from today is that you keep the people that we serve at the centre of your thinking. I seem to spend half of my job raging against the madness of the system that we're in and how could we do things better, which doesn't always mean I get lots of Christmas cards, but I think that's part of my job to say, am I the only person going mad here? Does this make any sense, what we're trying to do? But I also hope that you'll see this as part of your journey and ensure that your voice is heard in a thoughtful way, because I think that's important. But you need to make sure your voice is heard. And I had the good fortune to work with Anne last year and came to meet some practice nurses. And they really didn't understand the structures that were out there. They had massive things to say, and they were really passionate. So it's really important, picking up what Karen said, you think about how you articulate that, the observations that you make. And some of these things make no sense whatsoever to the people that we serve. So when I try to explain to people what I do in the village where I live, do you work in GP practice? No. Do you work in a hospital? No. Oh, it's too complicated. Don't tell me. But we're all about trying to transform that care and make the best use of every pound that we have. So we have a partnership across Lancashire and South Cumbria. We cover 1.7 million people. So you're somewhere on that map. Bay up at the top, West Lancs down at the bottom on the left, East Lancs on the right, Pennine, Lancashire, Fylde Coast, Blackpool, and then in the middle with the pink, Preston, Central and that area. So we cover the whole of Lancashire and South Cumbria, very disparate population, but we have 5 integrated care partnerships, well, 4 integrated partnerships and 1 multi-care partnership. But we cover 1.7 million people, and there's real challenges in delivering those services. The other issue is we work with all the local authorities. That's really challenging. They struggle to work together themselves. We've now got them to a place where they'll say, yeah, but we struggle to work together, and we struggle to work with them in an effective way, I think, sometimes across health and care together. But we are committed to doing that, and it's still an early journey. The neighbourhoods, I think, are more important than the primary care networks. And the neighbourhoods are really critical, and I hope many of you will play a part in that. Shouldn't be about role, shouldn't be about grade, should be about contribution. So again, a conversation I had 6 or 8 months ago, I said to somebody, well, could you imagine a situation where a non-GP leads a neighbourhood? Oh, I'm not sure I could imagine that for a year or 2. I said, well, that's fundamentally wrong. Might not be a nurse, it might be a physio, it might be an occupational therapist, it might be a psychologist, maybe it's a social worker. I think neighbourhoods are something much more organic. We're not trying to create, certainly in the Northwest, we're not trying to create mini versions of general practice or mini versions of hospital or community trusts as neighbourhoods. We want them to be much more embracing so that they can deliver what's needed. When we ran our first EPIC conference earlier this year, were any of you at it in Preston North End? We had Sir James Tinson speak, who runs the Timson shoe shops, you know. And he said, and it was really, we have there are links on our website to his audio and some of his slides. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it, go and have a listen. He said we only have 2 rules in Timson. Look the part and put the money in the till. And after that, you can do what you need to do. So if somebody comes in, they don't look like they can pay or they can afford it, you can flex and do what you want. That struck a massive chord with a lot of our frontline staff in health and social care who were at that event, because they felt that, well, why can't we have rules like that? Why do we have this massively complicated rule-based system? And for me, that means things like employ good people, keep patients safe, work together and make the best use of the resources. So do I think you're going to go out and do something crazy with patients? No, I don't think so. But we need to trust the people we employ, but give them the right framework to do that. And I think Timson's approach is really empowering. They also employ people direct from prison. So they've got the greatest avoidance of people returning to crime from what they do. So they give them a job, find them somewhere to live. They have pre-training before they come out of prison. And it's massively, massively successful. So if they can do it, healing shoes, making keys, I think we can do better in the NHS. But do think about those neighbourhoods. We have 41 of them, just like the primary care networks, and they are something that is there to be shaped. And I hope through Anne and others, we're getting that input from primary care nurses, healthcare assistants into that debate. And rest assured, we will be challenging it if we don't think it's the right thing to do. This is it looks really complicated. This is the partnership structure. And it's a partnership of all the CCGs, the acute hospitals, including primary care networks. So we will be putting a primary care network clinical director on our ICS partnership board. It's only one, it's not perfect. But there's a greater role as well for primary care networks, CDs and others to play at ICPs in that space. So some of those ICPs have already said, well, we're going to have 3 or 4 people there. Well, why are you having 3 or 4? I don't mind if they have 10. Well, it just seemed a good number with the neighbourhoods that we have and the difference in the populations. So think about who are the people on those ICPs and in those neighbourhoods who are there to represent the whole of the partnership working in those neighbourhoods. Find out who they are and influence them. It looks complicated, it's not. I've given you my email at the end of this. If any of this is of interest or irritating or whatever, send me an email. I won't be offended. If you want us to come and talk to you, if you want to think about how you link in, send us an email. I am on Twitter. I can't quite remember the handle, as they say, but I'll figure it out in a bit. We have a vision for Lancashire and South Cumbria. Anybody seen this vision? About a year ago, we started a conversation, because when I came back and I started this job, I thought, this is really interesting. We've got all this stuff. We've got these fine words. We've got this stuff over here we're going to do. And I came to the conclusion that Rome was burning while we were all sitting round saying everything was okay. So we started a piece of work in the partnership to say, we think our system is broken. Well, I can't tell you the pushback we had when we said, well, we think our system is broken. And we weren't saying, you're a bad person or you're not doing a good job. What we were saying is, if we carry on the way we're carrying on, we're not going to address these issues. So we want to have healthy communities. We want to have high quality and efficient services, not just about secondary care, wherever we are. So if you can't get access to psychological therapy, if you can't get access to mental health input when you need it, you're probably going to go into a crisis and be even more of a challenge and have a system that may not be responsive. And we want a health and care service that works for everyone, including our staff. So if we're going to kill you at the front line, you're probably not going to stay. And I think the final NHS people plan will be really positive from what I've seen as we go forward. So do think about that. And why did we say that? Well, because we've got a 12-year life difference from one part of the patch to another. That's really not acceptable. 12-year life difference just depending on where you're born and your life chances and your education. And we know only 20, 25, 30% of what we do in health makes any difference. The rest is about education, life chances, jobs, employment. So we need to keep that in mind. I love what we do, but I think sometimes the population's too in love with the NHS and it doesn't see some of our fractures and failures. And we need to invest in education. We need to invest in other services if we're going to make a difference. Certainly in social care, it's critical because it underpins so much of what we do. So coming back and thinking, well, we've lost thousands of district nurses, we've lost thousands of CPNs, and now they're the very people we actually need in this new strategy, which I'm totally supportive of. Our services aren't always providing consistent and high reliability. Our performance on some national targets is poor. So if you look at Lancashire and South Cumbria, our performance on things like constitutional targets, waiting times, diagnostics, 4-hour in ED, it's basically been going downhill for 3.5 years. And once it goes down, it stays down. It doesn't come back. There's no bounce back ability. So there's something about our system that we need to change, the way that it's organised and structured. It isn't just about the money, but we're also spending about £200 million of somebody else's money. So we're also quite broke. Now, we're spending 200 million, but we spend 4.2 billion in Lancashire and South Cumbria. So the question is, how are we spending that 4.2 billion as well as we could do? Most people say, no, I don't think we really are. I think there are tweaks and nuances we could make. We're obsessed with the 200 million, which is a problem, don't get me wrong. But it's the 4.2 billion and how we're organised that we really need to think about. And that's where the scale of the challenge comes. So we said there's a case for changing the way we work. And this was very much a conversation with the senior leaders across the whole of our system to say, we can't carry on doing what we're doing. It's probably not going to be realistic to have the same services in every place that we have now because the workforce isn't going to be there. Those slides Karen put up about the age profile, I'm down in the 2024 group. I don't know where you are. It's exactly the same across the whole of our populations. So with everything that's good that's going on and the increased places and the greater training, I think that's fantastic. But we're still going to have a gap. And services are going to fall over because we lose expert nurses, expert allied health, expert physicians. So that's going to be a challenge. So it's not going to be possible to carry on. But that's also really difficult because it means having a very honest conversation with the population about the stresses and strains. I don't think it's a depressing conversation. I think it's just realistic. If we don't have that conversation, why would you in your local place understand why there's a need for change? And I think that's something we've got to, based on our experiences, we've got to do something about that. So we went out on a limb with this and we said, this is the stuff we need to do. I'm not going to go through it all. We need, for example, we need to see our hospital providers work together horizontally right across Lancashire and South Cumbria. So we don't want a service falling over and then afterwards saying, oh, well, if we only spoke to each other earlier, we could have done better. It's not good enough. We've got to do better. But every single one of those providers, whether it's GP, community services, they've all got stresses and strains. So we can't carry on as we are. The other thing we've said is we must have an integrated health and social care workforce for the future. So not just thinking about health, but how do we deal with that disparity between funding in social care, what people get paid, etc., and whether we can recruit people. There's quite a lot in there. I'm not going to go into it all, but a public sector innovation alliance. We've just created the Seed Alliance with our 4 universities. So we can bid for resources to understand how we can turn around some of our enduring challenges. So that's really positive. There's great clinical and professional leadership available in Lancashire and South Cumbria, and it's really positive. So Anne's a great beacon of that and champions what you're doing. Hence why I was delighted to come along. Oh yeah, anything to support this, not a problem, other than getting here this morning. There's a commitment to developing roles, and not just licensed roles, but all roles. I think if we don't invent new roles and not make them too complicated, we're not going to address the workforce challenges that we have. We have got really great leadership. Jackie Curran, who's Director of Nursing and Healthcare Professionals, Andy Curran, who's the Medical Director, people like Anne, other leads on allied health professionals. They're there for you to use. So don't be a stranger. If you're not sure or you've got an issue, reach out to people and use the networks that you have. There's a commitment to investing in new roles, which has been mentioned and Karen said fully, and also about developing services in communities. How do we start to join those things up better? And especially some of the work in the voluntary community faith sector. It's amazing, some of the stuff that they do on a shoestring. And I know if we said to some of our NHS providers, could you run this service? It'd be 2 years later, 4 business plans, and probably would cost £1 million. And we've got people running amazing stuff. And I don't think we should run it on a shoestring. If we want VCFS input, we need to commission and pay for it. But they are part of the solution to some of our challenges. And some of the stuff they do, it's absolutely mind-blowing, the quality of what they do and the passion for it. And I know many of you will be touched by their services in your individual practices as part of local assets. We set up a thing called EPIC, which is a good Lancashire word. And that's really about engage, promote, innovate and collaborate. And we ran our big first conference in May this year at Preston North End. We've got a second event on the 10th of December. That's very much about what can we learn from local government. I think there's loads we can learn from local government about the way they go about things differently than, say, the health sector. So there are still some places available if anybody would like to come. Doesn't cost anything. Great event, learning ideas, and we're hoping we can pick one idea that will go back into each integrated care partnership to support people working together. And we put a little bit of money in to make that happen. We've established a Lancashire and South Cumbria Quality Improvement Network. So we got the QI leads together and said, couldn't we do something more effective across our systems? If you're really expert on this thing, I don't know, IHI, Model for Improvement, how could you help the people over here? How do we start to do things at a system level? So it builds on what Karen said with the QI work. And they're really passionate about doing that work. So again, if you're interested in that network or you've got a view, talk to us and I'll put you in touch with Tracy Crumbleholm is leading that work for us from Blackpool. But all of the partners are coming together and we see that as something that's going to develop and share resources and ideas and perhaps come to a place near you. They're also piloting a new online quality improvement coaching course and they're still looking for expressions of interest. So if you're interested, again, it might link in with what Karen said, if you're interested, got a passion for it, why not send an email and say, maybe I could be involved. I mentioned the seed allowance, and Howard Booth, who works in the Innovation Agency and works with us as part of the team, because this is all about teamwork, he's leading some of that work with our NHS and local government partners. So if you're interested, drop Howard an email and he will come back to you. On workforce, some of this has already been mentioned, but the Local Workforce Advisory Board has identified 240k for us to do some more focused work on how we improve supply and retention. Some of that will be in, I think, the new NHS People Plan. I'm still not convinced we're flexible enough in the NHS. So I have too many stories of people who say, I'm really good at this, but I can only do 2 days. I've got carer commitments. So they email somebody, it's only full time. It doesn't make any sense in the context of the challenges we have. We have to be much more flexible. I know patients need a 24-hour service and things have got to be covered, but it's crazy to me if a goldfish swims by and you think, there'll be another one. I don't think they will. So we've got to be much more flexible in the way that we approach things. Otherwise, we're going to lose good people. And one of the colleagues at the back had their return to practice stuff. How are we going to get people to return to practice if we're not flexible? Within reasonable bounds. I'm not saying everyone can do exactly what they want, but I don't think we're flexible enough. And I don't think we're responsive enough. Again, too many stories of people saying, I sent my CV or I made an inquiry and no one came back to me. Personally, when I do that, I have a list like places I'm never going again. I'm never going to that coffee shop, never going to that restaurant, horrendous. I'm the same with organisations. Think if you can't even respond to people, what sort of message does that send? So we've talked about through the LWAB, could we have something like the NHS, like the Army Navy Careers Office? Could we have something like that where there's one place you can go to, rather than you might go to email them. They don't look at their emails for 3.5 weeks. So you think, well, nobody seems to be bothered. That doesn't make any sense. So we've looked and said, could we do something different? The other thing we need to do on some of the workforce, I think, is we need to test out some new models. And by that, what I mean is, of course, one of the ladies at the back said she was a nursing associate. Those are fabulous roles, but we're not really going to know what the limit of the nursing associate role is in the context of the wider team unless we break the team. So how far can we go with nursing associate roles before it doesn't work any longer? We don't really know that. We don't know that with physician associates either, because currently you've got like maybe one physician associate in one team, and they're marvellous, but you don't really know how does that allow you to change your model so that you can recruit those people, because that's a role that they want to do. So we've some more work to do to really understand what can we do. But you're doing some great stuff in general practice, you know, talking to GPs and working with GPs, you know, who say it's really flexible in terms of the roles that people pick up and transfer between each other. Lots for other sectors to learn from what you do about that flexibility. But I've put Paula Rolls' contact details up there. She's our workforce lead with a small team. We work really closely with Health Education England and with people like Anne. So do, you know, if you don't know what's going on in some of this stuff, some of it's on our website, it's on some of these hub arrangements, please send us an email. If you want people to come and talk to you about what's going on, please let us know. And if you think things aren't getting provided that would make a difference, shout. If you don't ask, you don't get. So influence what's going on. We've also got a lead for leadership and OD. Some of that's happening between how does the ICS and the ICPs work together. There's a big OD piece going on with neighbourhoods and primary care networks. So again, about how we develop people to work together without killing them with bureaucracy, forms, or chits that they have to complete. So personally for me, if I was working in a neighbourhood, I'd say, don't give me the budget, I don't want the budget. What I need is 12 hours of psychology input or 20 hours of social, but I don't need the budget. Just give us the, you know, it's not about the budget, it's about what resources have you got to deliver what you need. So do think about those things. Danielle Coop, I haven't got my head around yet because she just got married, so she changed her surname. Danielle Coop is our lead, and she's terrific. We managed to steal her from local government, so she brings a totally different worldview to what we do. She understands different sectors. And we also want to see much more diversity in our workforce and much more opportunity. So all these programs that we bid for are also trying to say we need to make some of these roles more attractive. So when I was a staff nurse, I was quite happy working in intensive care, and people came along and said, we think you could do more. I don't want to do more. I'm really enjoying this. Go away. No. They drag you over. So I hope people are doing that for you. I think they are. That's why you're here today. But we also need to do that, and we need to push people who we think have got skills that could go further. So you make a big difference for the individual patient, make a big difference for a group of patients. Maybe it's about then making a big difference for a group of patients covering a network. Maybe it's then about the whole region. And then eventually you'll take over the world. I think that's how it works. But do think about that. Who's there giving you a nudge? And also be clear about what difference you're making. Just like Karen said on the slides, what difference are you making and how do you tell people about that difference? Because that's really important. That's the thing that means we come back the next day to make a difference. But do think about Danielle. I put this up at the end because I thought it was quite entertaining. I haven't got time for questions because we were slightly behind, so I'm not going to take any, but I am staying around today. So do get involved. If we're not doing what's helpful to you, don't be shy, don't be bashful, say so. But also understand the system's going through big change, and you can make and are making a massive difference, and I hope that that continues. So thank you for listening today. If it was really good, tell all your friends. If it was terrible, just keep it to yourself, okay? Don't mention it to anyone, but thanks.
Thank you very much, Talib. And, you know, I think we're all so busy in our own little patches, doing our own little work that, you know, sometimes it's hard to see that bigger picture. So I hope the information that Talib shared is, you know, really good and really helpful to you. Now, we are running quite a little bit behind time, but it's fine because I've built in time to catch up. So what I'm suggesting is that we have coffee now because it was scheduled for 20 past, and I would hate for it to go cold. So if we have coffee now, if you bring it back to your tables, and then rather than have 20 minutes for coffee, we'll start saying 10 minutes time, if that's all right with everybody. Is that all right with you, Angie? That's fine. So hopefully grab yourself a coffee and then come back sooner rather than later. Thank you. because it will also tell you which workshops you're assigned to for this afternoon. So it'd be really helpful. And also, we were talking about doing things differently. We are live streaming this across the practices, so we've let the practices know this morning, so your colleagues back at the ranch, if they've got a few minutes, will be able to watch this. So it's on www.youtube.com/C/John. Oh, I can't read it. Popham UK/live. So if any of you want to let your colleagues know, thank you. Pleased to say that we've got Angie Hack, who's from the Queen's Nursing Institute with us. So there will be time at lunchtime to look around the stands and later on, but for those of you who have to kind of are meeting deadlines, I don't want to delay you, so it'll just mean that we've kind of caught 10 minutes up now. So if I can ask you to go back to your seats and then Angie can start. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me? What is great that I've observed this morning is the networking that's going on, and that's really important because I recognise that general practice nursing is very isolated. So this is a fantastic event to be at, but also to see so much networking going on. So that's fantastic. I want to start off by congratulating you because on Tuesday there were some national retention awards in London that my colleague attended, and Lancashire and South Cumbria won the best flexible working offer to support work-life balance. So congratulations to you all. Woo! Why aren't you clapping? Okay, so that's marvellous. Fantastic, well done. So I spotted that. I thought I'd congratulate. Were you aware of that? No? So you are now. So well done to you all. So those, remember, they're national. So your voice is out there. Okay, so my name is Angie Hack, as you know, and I'm currently on secondment with the Queen's Nursing Institute. My background is district nursing for many years, and I had the privilege of working across. I was a district nurse, but the practices I worked with, I also did practice nursing as well. So I'm jack of all trades, really. My academic career has started running the general foundation degree for assistant practitioners. So I'm passionate about developing healthcare assistants and healthcare support workers, which I also did as a district nurse, as I was an auxiliary nurse, very early 70s. So you can calculate how old I am now. So latterly, I've been running the general practice nurse programme at London South Bank University, and I'm passionate about general practice nurse development because, again, as I said earlier, you're very isolated in your areas, and it's just about bringing you together, but giving you opportunity. I had the largest cohort in the UK for about 4 years, 50 students each time, so which has been brilliant. And I was lucky to be at another conference in London on Tuesday, and a load of my very first students were there. They were professional development leads. They were also speaking, which was fantastic to see. So when, you know, on the back of what Karen and Talib are saying, this is about you are the future, and this is about seeing your worth. Anne has kindly asked me to talk about the Queen's Nursing Institute. Can I just ask, are there any Queen's nurses here today? Oh, yes. Put your hand up, be proud. So there's 3 of us here, great. Have you all heard of the Queen's Nursing Institute? Is there any, are there many that haven't heard of the Queen's Nursing Institute? Okay, so I'll hopefully give you a bit of history of who we are. We're a team of 17 people, 5 of us are nurses, and our chief exec is Dr. Crystal Oldman. And we are a charity that we sit in the Royal College of Nursing building, right at the top of the building, very handily behind John Lewis, Debenhams and House of Fraser. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It's too handy, actually. My bank balance is, yes, you can imagine. And we're dedicated to improving nursing and care of patients. And we work very, very closely with practitioners, which is why I'm on board. I am on secondment from the university until April, and I've been commissioned through the QNI to take general practice nursing forward for NHS England. So just a bit of history about the Queen's Nursing Institute. We've just been awarded the Guinness World Book of Records for the longest nursing charity in the world, 132 years. Which is really, really exciting. We didn't expect to get that. It was a long road, but anyway, we got there. So, and we are, as you can see, committed to promoting best practice. And as I said, we work very, very closely with practitioners because you're the voice of that care. William Rathbone, the gentleman you see there, he was a gentleman who needed someone to look after his wife at home, and he approached Florence Nightingale and to talk about how she could give him a nurse to look after his wife. And thereafter, conversations occurred whereby the first nursing school was opened in Liverpool. And William Rathbone's great-grandson, Bill, is one of our trustees, and he looks just like William. If you saw him walking in the room now, you'd recognise him for sure. So we promote excellence of care, and we do that by talking to you guys on the ground floor. And I hate to say that, I don't mean that in a derogatory term, ground floor. You're the most important people there, and you know what's going on, and you know what is needed. And today's session is about you having a voice in that, and I want to demonstrate how you have a voice through the Queen's Nursing Institute. So our goals are that we influence policy, and we do that by gathering evidence, and we have influence policy all the time. Dr. Crystal Oldman is out there all the time speaking to senior leads about how we can make a difference and how your voice makes a difference. We collect data, so we undertook the very first general practice nurse survey in 2014, and for those who've been around a long time, hopefully you contributed to that. And that report was published in 2015, and where I think we had 3,400 responses, which was amazing. It's the very first general practice nurse survey. And that's where it was identified that 34% of general practice nurses will be retiring by next year, which isn't too far away. And that data has influenced the 10-point plan and also the long-term plan. So you're starting to see how your voice is influencing changes. Okay? We also fund innovation projects. We run innovation projects once a year, which we have part funding from the Burdett Institute. And the first year was men's health, and last year was homeless health, 10 projects, and then this year we're doing frailty. So we have lots of general practice nurses running projects in those areas. And with the homeless health and the men's health, some of the general practice nurses have applied for further funding to take their projects further forward, and one secured 250,000 to take that forward. So can you see, again, I'm going to focus on your voice. This is about you making a difference to care. Role models and leaders. I know that Karen alluded to Rosalind Franklin leadership program. There are lots of different programs. We run a leadership program for Queen's nurses called the Aspiring Leaders Program, and we also have an exec leadership program which Karen has undertook. And those people who undertake those courses go out there and are the role models of the future, and that applies to all leadership programs that are available nationally. We also write standards for practice. So are any of you familiar with the general practice nurse standards that came out in 2017? Okay. So we started off with the district nursing standards. So they are voluntary standards. So although they're endorsed by the NMC, they're always on the advisory group. You know, they are guidelines. They are set. They're standards that can be applied to programs, future programs. So we've also I think it was the children's community children's nursing standards for 2018, and part of my role is to develop the standards for nurses new to general practice that will hopefully be published very soon. I'm also engaged in developing standards for learning disability community nursing as well, in my spare time. Okay, again, when we're writing the standards, we involve you on the ground floor, and patients, and students, and leaders, and academics. It applies to everybody, and we engage with everybody. It's a collaborative approach to building these standards. We also, at the Q&I, offer support for nurses, and we have a grant, we have an education grant. Jo Morby, my colleague, looks after this, and we've even put out, with the recent flooding up in this way, for nurses who've been working in the community, they can apply for support, financial support, particularly with hardship, because I know that there's been a dreadful situation. We also offer education grants, but you have to have been working in the community or working in the community at this time. We also run a Keeping in Touch project, and this is for nurses who retire, because we all work our socks off, and then when retirement does come, and I'm counting down now, but I've still got a long way to go, people forget those people. When they leave the job, you lose a bit of your social life as well. And there are people who, particularly up here, are very isolated. So we engage, we almost adopt a nurse. And I'm actually part of the KIT project, and I've got a lady called Wendy who lives in Ipswich. We don't meet, but I ring her once a week on a Thursday at 8:30. We put the world to rights, we giggle a lot. It makes me sit down and stop for a minute, but it also, her comment was that she feels valued. She still has a value in life, in society. Otherwise, there wouldn't be anyone to talk about what she does, what she's always done in her life. And she committed, her life to nursing for a very long time. And you are a forgotten entity once you retire sometimes. So that project has been really, really successful. And we always come back to nursing. And yes, I think we have a good old moan together. So that's quite productive for me as well. So that's our goals, but that's just to give you a picture of what we are doing at this time. So in terms of Queen's nurses, I think there are 55 Queen's nurses in Lancashire and 13 in Cumbria, 13 or 14 in Cumbria. The Queen's nursing title encourages you to be someone to promote best practice. So there are networks of Queen's nurses, you can see on the map. Those nurses meet at least quarterly, sometimes twice a year, but mostly quarterly, and they get together and they're district nurses, they're community nurses, they're GPNs, they're health visiting, they're school nursing. They get together and they lobby. They often lobby. And this is good, and it's a good support for you. To apply to be a Queen's nurse, it's not open until January, but you have to have been a community nurse for 5 years, because we need to have that expertise there. But it's about sharing that knowledge and information. Okay, the 10-point plan. So you're all aware of it by now, and that's really pleasing, because a couple of places I've been to, when I put that up, people look at me blankly. I can hear whispering here, and I have thought, oh God, they're not happy with what I'm saying, talking about. And actually, they'd never heard of the 10-point plan. For whatever reason, it just hasn't filtered down in all places, but we're hoping that's improved, and it obviously has here. But I just want to focus on what we at the Q&I have done in terms of taking the 10-point plan forward, which I think is a really, really positive move, as is the primary care network system. So when I alluded to the survey I was talking about earlier, this is the report. The 21st Century was the report based on that survey, which we will have to review very, very soon. That's my colleague, Carol Webley-Brown, who's a committed GPN and fights the fight for general practice nursing. Okay, so as the projects that I spoke about, the 3 projects, all of our resources on our website, so on my slides I've got all the links to everything you will need, that all the resources are free, you don't have to sign up or anything. Our website is an open access site. The standards, as I said, the GPN, the DN and the CCN. Now this is quite an important resource. If you're all familiar with the transition to community nursing, this has been out quite a while. And this is a really good online resource, particularly for those who are nurses new to general practice. It just gives you an overview of the expectations of your role and what you should expect from your role. It gives you lots of hints, it gives you some work to do as well, but it's a very good resource to support you. But it's all online. It's also for district nursing as well. The Induction Plate, that was released earlier this year. Are you all familiar with the Induction template? No? Okay, so that's another resource for nurses new to general practice. It's also to guide practice managers, to practice leads and academics in terms of what should be in place to support a general practice nurse new to practice. What we have found with all the work we've done around standards is there's such a variation in the support in practice. So I've had nurses contact me to say, I've had 1 day orientation, no proper induction, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing, Angie. I'm on practice on my own. And that, sadly, is happening around the country still. So we act as a good resource for practitioners, as you can tell. And I even had someone come to me Tuesday who's pulling her hair out. So we help direct those people to go forward because we don't want to lose that expertise. Okay, so some of the other work we're doing, resources, are the transition, as I've said, and the voluntary standards. I've also been commissioned through Karen to develop a website for general practice nurses. It's the General Practice Nurse Education Network. All of these links should work for you when you get the slides. This website was designed for you, and it's you don't have to sign up to it. It's a free access to anybody. But the idea is with 3 clicks, you can get to the resource you need to get to, and I was hoping to show you that today. But please take a look and please comment on it. It's a work in progress. You know, I underestimated how long it would take to produce any resource for the website. Oh my goodness. So I am, it's still being developed, but I would welcome any comments on the website. There are access to A to Z of resources, and that's what I'm building at the moment. There's also a section for nurses who want to become general practice nurses, and there's education resources. There's also direct links to key organisations. For example, at the bottom there's a carousel where you can just click onto Public Health England, NHS England. You can get there directly. You don't have to go through Google, etc. A lot of general practice nurses have already sent forward some blogs that I've uploaded, so they can have a read of those as well. So please feel free to have your voice and write a blog. No more than 1,000 words, please. But I think that's a really good way of sharing your knowledge. The other job that I have is to facilitate the Association of General Practice Nurse Educators. This is the first time that we've brought general practice nurse educators together. So I'm a member of the Association of District Nurse Educators. We've been running for a very long time. And on the back of that, I'm facilitating this group. And we meet twice a year. And again, we are going to plan to lobby to make sure that we get general practice nursing on the map, but a more standard, linear process for us to have a voice. Recently, we've received monies to support a new award for general practice nurses who've undertaken the specialist practice qualification, and it's the Elemry Award. And so any academics here, please put forward your students, and it doesn't have to be the best performing, it's someone who's made a difference to general practice nursing. And we have a lovely awards ceremony in London for that nurse. So we had our first award for a general practice nurse in July. And finally, our Q&I website has every resource possible for you available, so please do access it. I know you're being thrown lots and lots of websites, but we do have lots of resources that you can access for nothing and share. Okay. Yeah, that'd be great, please. So I'm just going to show you a film just to talk about.
And it's being held in London.
It's about you having a voice. If you just listen for a minute,
We've been
please.
working with Suzanne.
I don't think they can
Gordon
hear,
over the last
Anne.
year, and today we have 15 nurses, Queen's nurses, coming together to learn how to articulate their value and to raise their voice as a nursing profession. We know that nurses are expert at doing their work. What they're not so expert at is being able to tell the public what they do and why they're doing it and what their value is as a nurse.
I think sometimes we don't have a voice and we don't actually showcase the actual work we do.
We need to not be the small nurses that do as we're told, to actually champion all the successes, the professional skills that we can bring.
We need to really tell some positive stories about what we're doing.
As nurses, we tend to downplay what we do and we don't talk about the complexity of our role. I think we need to market ourselves better, and Silenced Voice is to me an opportunity to do that.
My ambition for this workshop is to help nurses articulate their work to their patients, to their managers, to the National Health Service, to the public. People are trying to cut nursing positions, to replace nurses with generic care workers. And if you don't explain the expertise and the experience and the skills and the knowledge that nurses have, why will anybody provide the resources to fund nursing? They won't, and that's what we're seeing all over the world. So I would encourage you to not discuss how passionate you are, right? Because it's not about your passion, it's about your knowledge.
So what's really stuck in my mind today is when Suzanne actually says don't devalue the tasks, because it's very easy to sort of think of tasks as being a tick box, but actually it is what we do on a day-to-day basis, and those tasks together make up a very complex interaction with patients or clients.
What is ordinary to us and is just the day-to-day job is actually quite extraordinary for other people who don't know what we do. So we need to actually get that over and articulate it better.
Giving examples of what we do rather than just talking about how we do it. Not to devalue how important community nursing is and how to sell that. That's what I've really learned, of really how to tweak the words to celebrate what we do.
It's been a brilliant day. We've had lots of energy in the room and some fantastic learning around how to tell your story. And we've heard lots of wonderful stories by the nurses, learning to be able to be really articulate about what they do and to use the language that the public understand.
We are soliciting stories at the Queen's Nursing Institute. The importance of these stories is that they illustrate the power, knowledge, skill, intelligence embedded in nursing work. It's been a great day. Every time I do a workshop, I learn something new about nursing.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic, brilliant opportunity, really, really good.
I'm going to go away and be more confident and been able to share what I've learned today with my other colleagues.
This workshop has been empowering, motivating, and has given me back my critical eye.
Absolutely fantastic. So far, I just love it. Fantastic to be part of these discussions. I've learned so much about how to be strong in my voice and how to celebrate nursing. It's really important that we do this.
So can I just ask, are there any comments about that film? Do you feel it might empower you? Do you feel that it might just poke you a bit? No? I want you to consider what you are and what you do every day. And I know that if people ask you what you do, just say, I'm just a nurse. How many people have said that in their lifetime as a nurse, in their career? I'm just a nurse. You're not just a nurse, and you are devaluing what you do. You contribute so much to people's lives, and particularly with general practice nursing, my goodness, you see whole generations, and that information that you give to them at the beginning filters down to the rest of the generations within those families, doesn't it? So you're pivotal to future care, are you not? But you need to be shouting about it. And we're trying to do that. We're trying to get you to think about that, okay? So I want you to consider about articulating what you do and what your contribution is. What do you do? What do you truly do? How many of you say, if someone says, what do you do? How many of you say, I do smears? Anything else you do? Ear care? Anything else? Take bloods, wound care. It is so much more than that. Get away from looking at the actual skills that you do. Think about your competency. And your competency involves knowledge and understanding of what you do. You could teach a monkey, to do blood pressure. You really can, but they wouldn't know what to do with that information. So start looking inwards about what you do and what you bring to the table, because it's so important. Articulate, as I say, your contribution. Be proactive. Okay, so how many of you have got a notepad by your bed because you think of something in the night? I have, but I'm too lazy. Great. But you need to do that because every one of you in this room are innovative. You all have ideas and you don't write it down. And we need those ideas to come forward because that's how we're going to make a difference in the future. How many of you have published? Anyone published? No? Okay. So, come on then. All of you in this room, none of you have published, apart from Karen and me. Oh, thank you. So I dare you, I challenge you to get out there and start writing. And your first step could be to write a blog for me for the General Practice Nurse Education Network. So would you consider that? It's about raising awareness, it's about sharing information. It might just be about your story as a general practice nurse, that's fine, okay? Or as a healthcare assistant, as assistant practitioner, as a nursing associate, it doesn't matter, okay? Just get your story down. That's the beginning, and then publish. For those who are associate nurse, nursing associates and assistant practitioners, the Journal of Healthcare Assistants is built on contributions from healthcare support workers, etc., assistant practitioners. That work is all done by those people. So you can make a difference. Work collaboratively. As I said earlier, you know, a lot of you are very isolated in your areas. You need to be meeting together. You need to be networking. You need to be talking. You're all really pleased to see each other. I could see you all running across the room earlier to greet each other. You need to get together more often and share those experiences and knowledge. Support each other. We do not look after each other. So you've just won an award up here about looking after each other, really. This is about, you know, work-life balance. This is about you caring and looking after each other. Nurses are terrible for looking after each other. We're not very forgiving. So look after each other. Oh, my clicker's not clicking. Seize opportunities. So how many of you have seen there are meetings going on in the practice, but you don't go in there? Have you not been invited? Put yourself, knock on the door and just get in there. Don't be afraid. Get in there, find out what's going on, because they're probably talking about you anyway, so you might as well find out. Find out exactly what it is so you can put them to rights. But it's important that you engage. You've got to stop having that void between you know, senior practitioners in the practice and they couldn't survive without you. You're crucial to general practice, so you need to be having a voice locally as well. Okay, so speak up. So I'm going to end on a poster. So Suzanne, before the video started, I wanted to introduce Suzanne. So Suzanne Gordon is a health journalist. She lives in San Francisco. She's kindly invited me over, so I think I might pop over there. But she is passionate. She was doing some work, and she just couldn't believe how slow we are as a nation in terms of voicing what we do as nurses in the UK. And it is just a nurse. So she gave us some words to write, and we've put it into a poster. So I am selling, I've only got 5 with me, but they're £5 a time. But I try and encourage someone to have, or everybody, to have one in your room to remind you about what you do and what you contribute, but also patients will read it too, so they'll know what they're going. So could you just bear with me 1 minute? So we have 2 posters. We've got one is I'm just a nurse, and one's I'm a nurse. We changed it a bit. Okay, I'm a nurse. I make the difference between life and death. I have the educated eyes that prevent medical errors, injuries, and other catastrophes. I'm a researcher who helps nurses and doctors give better, safer, and more effective care. I work in a fast-paced community team managing and monitoring patients who are receiving cutting-edge treatment and evidence-based care. I'm a nurse. I educate patients and families about how to maintain their health. I make the difference between a person staying in their own home or being admitted to hospital. I make sure that children and young people stay healthy so they can learn in school. I make the difference between dying in agony and dying in comfort and with dignity. I'm central to providing the real bottom line in healthcare. Don't you want to be a nurse too? Thank you very, very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. That was really good, and a lot of information for you to take away in those slides. So I've great pleasure in welcoming Declan Hadley, who's our Lancashire and South Cumbria digital lead, to speak to you about all the exciting things that are happening.
Thank you very much, Anne. On that video was one of the Queen's nurses that's working in our team, Sue Capstick. So Sue Capstick's been doing some really brilliant work around digital pioneers, which I'm going to talk about. So it's really starting to feel a bit Christmassy. I don't know about you lot, but it did. And I have a, just before I start that, guess what tomorrow is? Anybody want to guess? Black Friday. Oh, great. Have you been watching it? I've been keeping an eye on things. You can, if you're really lucky, you can get one of these or something like one of these on a really low price. And if you wanted to, think about how you could use one of these. You could put it by your bedside. So if you woke up with a great idea, you could say, Alexa, please add blah, 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 blah to my list. No, I agree with, I've got them all over the house, and I'll come on to that in a minute. It's always a bit nervous talking to a group of nurses, but I have to declare, because it's Christmas, I'm going to tell you a lot of personal things today, and I'm going to start with my fetish, if you like, for Christmas lights. I'm one of these people that puts thousands, tens of thousands of them out, and they're all computer controlled, and they can play to music. So I'm getting ready to do that, and this just reminded me as I walked in, I need to do that. So I've been cleaning up my office, and because I need to solder some lights and do some stuff. And I found this. Some of you will have one of these. I'm hoping that most of you have got one of these. If you were a nurse in the 1980s and 90s, you got one of these when you qualified, and this is mine. So I'm a nurse. And it reminded me, and you've been talking about what are nurses, and just for the last few months, actually, because you're getting older, I'm now a patient, and I'm seeing more of the health service than perhaps I wanted to. And back in the summer, I got up, had a wee in the morning, there was blood in my wee. And I went on a 2-week pathway, which I'm still on. It's just something about that. How's that work? And I've had everything poked, prodded, videoed, x-rayed, you name it. And it's been going on. And it got to my ultimate fear. I ended up in the colonoscopy camper van at LTH. I don't know if any of you have seen the colonoscopy camper van. It only just arrived. It's actually 2 Arctic trailers stuck together. And maybe it's because I'm a bloke. I don't know. It's my worst thing. And it'd been through all these other tests, and I kind of knew this was going to be one that came up with something, and it did. But what really, really made a difference to me, I was dead nervous, and I went in, and the guy sat there, who was a nurse, sat there, and he could tell, and he put the pen down, and he sat and talked to me for 15, 20 minutes. And that made such a difference. It reminded me of this. It reminded me about why I went into nursing in the first place. So one of the things I'd say to you, don't underestimate your power, your value, the difference you can make. So I went in there, no gas, no sedation. I got my results, still early results, and I still haven't had all the tests back, but I'm not worried about it because this guy, Rob, really made a difference to me. And it made such an impact, and it reminded me about when I was a nurse. I don't remember much of my nursing career, but I do remember a few patients. I also remember falling out of the kitchen in the nurses' home at Chorley, but that was a different story for a different day. And I remember this patient. I can't remember her name. She was probably about the same age as me, maybe a year younger. And she was almost catatonic. She wouldn't talk. She was depressed. And I remember we had a conversation. It was in the lounge. I can't remember what it was about. But I remember a look on her face when we were just talking. Well, I was talking to her primarily. And she said something back, and she smiled. And that was the first time I'd seen her smile. And it was taking that time made me realise. I saw that young woman go from this almost like empty vehicle to somebody she left within about a couple of weeks afterwards. And I thought to myself, that is what we're here to do. When we talk about, I'm a psychiatric nurse, as you probably gather, you learn a lot of things. You learn how to play pool, drink coffee, and listen. And it's the last one that really matters. So don't underestimate those things. Anyway, digital. A few minutes on that, and then I'm going to let Stephanie talk. All the things that I've found out over the years is about technical stuff, that if it hasn't got you and you aren't bought into it, it's landfill. Technology does nothing on its own. But actually, technology has the power to change lives. I was at a conference, all the IT people, you can imagine that's a good night out, can't you? All the IT people come together, and it is a good night out, actually. One of the things about IT is, people say, how do you get your IT? I said, how do you get them to talk more? I said, I'm not bothered about them talking, I just like them to shower. So anyway, but we do. We have a night out, and we go to Blackpool. And we try and be really kind of thoughtful about all the things about technology, but it can get a bit boring from time to time. But we started the seminar with this guy who was blind, and he got up and he spoke, and he was brilliant. And he said, technology has done, so he had a congenital eye problem, so he started sighted, and he'd lost his sight by the time he was 5. And he said, technology has done more for him than any healthcare innovation. So don't underestimate what it can do. It also has the power to create all sorts of problems, and if it doesn't work well for you, your experience might be very down about it. So technology is not about control centres, advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, but all those things can make a difference if we apply them. And the real theme for me is all about you and people like you and how we use your skills and capabilities. I've got a few things in here on the desk. I presented to the ICS a few weeks ago, and Tally will have heard me say this. They were asking me about all the wonderful technologies, and I went, have you seen one of these? this. This isn't just an ordinary light. I love this bit. This isn't just an ordinary light bulb. It's not even a Marks and Spencer's light bulb. This is a smart bulb. And I bet if we had enough time, which we haven't because I need to give some time for Stephanie, we could think up 25, 30 things that this light bulb can do. It costs about £5. And it changes colour, so you could have a disco if you wanted to. But what it does, it could remind you to take your medication. It could tell you if you were deaf that somebody had pressed the doorbell because it could flash. It's a passive sensor. If you've got this in an elderly patient's home and they don't switch the light bulb on and off like they probably do every single day, then you know something might be happening to them. And best of all, if you replace this light bulb with an old style light bulb, you're going to save £15 a year on your electricity bill. Now, you need some stuff to make it work, like Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. But we shouldn't be looking to say because patients don't have Wi-Fi. There are community groups in Lancashire and South Cumbria that will help people who are disadvantaged get onto using the Wi-Fi internet. And they can have all the pleasure of Black Friday and stuff like that. There's another thing, just an example of this, a little switch. So if you go into a patient's home, and there's a story about a patient in Wigan. He'd keep an elderly guy living on his own, kept falling over, and the falls team went in. They couldn't just figure out why he was falling over. What he was doing was getting up in the night to have a pee, bending over to switch the light on, and falling over. You could put one of these, stick it on the wall where you needed it to be, and you can program it to switch on lights like that with very, very little tech. So there's some really simple things that we can do to bring about change. But I can only bring about that change with you and enabling you to do that. So very quickly, we have a digital strategy. It's got 5 core themes, but it's really all about people. There are people are our patients and you as the workforce. The 4 themes surrounding the person are really important. The reason Anne's now working with me and Sue Capstick, and I've got a therapist and others, is because to really make this tech work, I need some of your time. And Anne and I, we're going to get some money in a few months' time, and what we are looking for is to create an army of people who can come and work with us to bring about this change. We'll fund you a day a week. We'll give you a small grant for some equipment. We won't burden you with paperwork. We'll make it work for you and for the patients that you serve. There's some other things in here. One thing do you think your IT equipment in general practice is good? It's shit. Let's be really honest, isn't it? You can probably get in the morning, switch it on, go and make a cup of tea, write a novel, do a few other things, and it'll still be loading up. We need to change that. We need to make the IT work for you. Now, I am a bit of a lone voice in some of this because some of my IT colleagues go, you can't say things like that, Declan, that's just not on. But we can, because you're behind me and you're going to help me say, it's shit, we don't want it to be like this anymore. We want it to be better. And we can make it better. And we need to make sure that the tail is not wagging the dog. So I need you to help me really put that case forward. I've got some work, we're going to do some work with, I was working last night on a bid. It's for Office 365, and you go, what's that? That's the latest, shiniest Office stuff. No, it's not that. It's about a set of tools that will allow you to work in a flexible, agile way with other members of your PCN. It'll allow you to work at home if you needed to. A few weeks ago, we had our first full clinic session. I don't know if anybody was in the practice, Chorley practice. I know that some of you here from Chorley. One of the GPs did a full morning session via video because she had some childcare problems. And she did that. The patients liked it, and obviously she found it very useful too. You could be doing video consultations in general practice all over the place. I've had a look on my phone this morning. Unfortunately, there's only 3 appointments at my practice. I don't think anybody's from my practice is here today. So it's all very well having the tech. But what I'd really like, going back to my earlier experience, I'd like to get all the district nurses, all the primary practice nurses, all of the chronic condition checkups, the general health checkups online, because actually for me it would really work, and I'm sure other people it would work too. That doesn't mean you can't see people face to face, but if you want to book your asthma appointment or your health check or whatever it is, it'd be really good to have that on there. And actually it'd be really good if I could just send you my details and just send you a peak flow or something like that, or send you some information about my weight and do it online. It would be even better if you listened to what Georgina's going to talk about this afternoon and did a group session online. And I know that we're trying some of that stuff. So I'm not really going to spend much more time going through all that, other than to say the three important parts: the person, the most important thing is the person, you, and together you and the patients will create the future that we want to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Declan. I mean, one of the reasons that I was keen to join Declan's team is that it is exciting. It's a fab place to be. I've got two hats, so I haven't really given up the GPN stuff, so I'm still the lead for that. And I went, no, it's fine. I can do it all. I can do it all. I can be in both places. But it really is about making a difference. And unfortunately, Stephanie can't be here today because she's had a bereavement, unfortunately. But I'm going to deliver her presentation because it is about being a digital champion, and it is so important to for you to hear all the exciting things that she's been doing. So Stephanie is a Queen's nurse, and we've heard and Angie talk about Queen's nursing today, and she's a practice nurse at Sabden and Worley Medical Centre, and also now a digital champion. And it is so fabulous that we've now got more than 50 digital champions across Lancashire and South Cumbria, and by the time this afternoon's finished, we'll have another 25 from practices that don't already have one. And this was Stephanie's story around why she wants to be a digital champion. So there is some policies, and I'm not going to go into them, but clearly the long-term plan, Chapter 5, talks about digital and why we need a digitally enabled workforce. And that is so that you out in general practice can make huge differences with the limited resources that we've got, but actually do something very different. And Declan's already mentioned, we've got our Lancashire and South Cumbria plan as well. But please take some time to read those documents when you've a moment. So there are some contractual requirements, and you'll have seen digital starting to come into your practice. So whether that's online appointments, and there's some key targets around enabling patients to be able to book their appointments online. Video consultations we've heard, and we saw the presentation last week from Library House where Dr. Colvin is putting sessions on now to do video sessions with her patients, and a whole range of things. But we want to do more than just the contractual stuff. It's the things that Declan is talking about. It's making real difference to patients by trying things, being innovative and looking for solutions. So whilst we have to do all the things that we have to do, we want to make a difference to what patients are doing. So Stephanie, why did she want to be a digital champion? She knows that the digital revolution is here to stay. It's not going to go away. We're just going to have more and more digital. You know, back in 2008, there was probably 17% of people that had a smartphone. It's now 78%. I remember back in the 80s, we moved down to Hampshire, and we went to live near somebody, and he worked for Motorola, and he had, you know, a phone, a mobile phone, and these was only in industry, and he was a rep, and he was selling these, and he said, it won't be long before you'll have one of these. And my husband and I thought, he's mad. Why, really, why would we want a mobile phone? And he used to talk about them. He said, no, that's not going to happen, you know. But now, you know, I bet, you know, if I ask you, you've all got a mobile phone in this room, and it's the same with tablets. You know, 2008, 2% had a tablet, and now, you know, where would we be without some of this mobile technology? So Stephanie was keen to embrace and see what we could do differently in primary care. So we've bid for funding, and we've been very successful in having programmes that have been funded. And Karen mentioned as well that the national team are keen on supporting the development of digital champions. So we've got a partnership working with Redmore Health, and with them we've set up digital champion programs. So they're action learning sets, they run over 2 sessions, and it's about nurses talking about what they could do, being given the ideas to do something different, and it's the freedom to do that. So you're given some key tools and techniques and advice and places to search out some of this information. You go away, and then 6 weeks later you come back. You keep in touch, so the facilitators will come out to your practice and help you if you're struggling, or you can all, as a peer group, and the groups that have gone before you can all be in touch, and you share ideas, and it is about building and doing something different in practice. And the exciting things that people have done are, you know, amazing, and I'll share some of those with you. So, yeah, Stephanie went on that journey, and she's developed a Facebook page in her practice. And I know there's been a lot of press about Facebook, but actually it's secure. You'll be taught how to make it a closed Facebook for your practice, but it is fantastic about sharing messages, public health information, and communicating with your practice. And in fact, Stephanie's, I think they had some technical issue that day and needed to contact their patients for that day, and they so easily could do that through what they'd implemented. That we haven't already got an animation for, the team will help you to support that. You don't have to be techie to do it, you just need about 100 words and give them ideas of what your characters want to look like. And again, Karen was talking about digital clinical supervision coming next year. Oh, we're doing it already. We've got a team of nurses from the original digital champion group that have come together, and they now are able to communicate in a virtual space and do some of that work. We are part of the national programme as well, but we're kind of piloting some of that work now in Lancashire and South Cumbria, and it reduces that isolation that nurses often feel in general practice as well, and it gives them access to specialists or people who've got those skills to be able to do that. So these are a few of the animations, and I'll just endeavour to play one of them for you.
And not on the vascular register. If so, contact your GP surgery and arrange your free NHS health check. Everyone can be at risk of ill health and long-term conditions, such as cardiovascular disease, stroke, diabetes, heart attack, kidney disease, dementia. The NHS health check is designed to spot early signs of these conditions. So what happens at the NHS health check? The NHS Health Check is a 15 to 20 minute friendly consultation. During this time, you will have a blood test. This will check for pre-diabetes, diabetes, and your risk of cardiovascular disease, CVD. You will be weighed, and along with your height, your BMI will be assessed. Blood pressure and pulse will also be checked. We will also measure your waist circumference and discuss the findings with you. We will chat to you about your diet and lifestyle and offer advice. We will ask about smoking habits and drinking patterns to ensure this is within safe limits and any relevant family history. If we identify any results that increase your risk of developing the above conditions, we will offer you advice in how to improve things and reduce your risk factors, or signpost you to other people who may be able to help you. The benefits of attending the NHS Health Check is so that we can pick up early any risks to your health and help you to make changes to your lifestyle to prevent ill health. And you will be offered this health screening every 5 years. This is preventative healthcare and is highly recommended. The free NHS health check is preventative healthcare and has the potential to prevent 1,600 heart attacks and strokes, prevent 4,000 diabetes cases, detect 20,000 cases of diabetes or kidney disease each year, avoid at least 650 premature deaths a year. Contact your GP surgery today to book your health check.
So Stephanie developed that along with colleagues from Redmore Health, and there's a whole range of those now to be played in your practice surgeries, and encourage people to come for whether it's a health check or they're in the vax or whatever.
When I was told that I was to start having insulin, I was really scared. I thought there would be no way that I'd ever be able to manage this by myself. The thought of checking my own glucose blood levels and injecting myself with insulin was overwhelming, with so many different things to remember. I began to learn using a 4-week teaching plan. The first week, I learned how to get a small drop of blood from my finger.
See, I've been onto the digital team, but I need help. I'm not the techie person. Okay, so as you can see, there's a whole range of these animations that are available, and they're all on the Clinitex website, and I'll show you that in a second. So the other things that they've been doing are these remote consultations with their patients, and also with care homes as well, because that's a particular need, and often those patients it can be quite time consuming, and if they can have the right support at that time, it will save hospital attendances as well and admissions. So they're doing that. There's a particular project that's running to support developing shared care plans across primary and secondary care. So Word and Medical Centre are piloting MDT meetings. And we've talked about long-term condition management. And there is the Clinitex website where there's a whole range of resources. There's all the animations that are on there and all the protocols that you might want in practice to support that as well. Digital photography as well is taking place. So we know that sometimes a referral will go into secondary care and it might get bounced around a few places before it lands on the right clinician's desk. Picture tells 1,000 words, so some of the teams now are attaching photographs to their referrals so that it's going to the right person, and for wound tracking as well in general practice, so that you can, it's great writing, 100 words about what a wound looks like, but if you've got a picture to compare, it's really helpful. We've talked about Facebook, and, we saw earlier on that our recruitment and our workforce in general practice nursing is actually doing quite well in Lancashire and South Cumbria, and some practices have been using technology to interview people from afar, encouraging people to come to work in Lancashire and South Cumbria because it's an exciting place to be, and we're, I think, getting a reputation for, come, see what we're doing, it's exciting, and we're promoting ourselves through technology. I mentioned the use of apps, and we promote and support the Orca web platform as well as the EMIS app library. So apps that you may want to try with your patients to support them to look after themselves are all available on the website, and we make all this information available. Absolutely massive benefits for clinicians and also patients from being a digital champion. Greater value for money, efficient use of resources, improved team working, reducing that isolation, and freeing of appointments. Absolutely, it's made a huge difference. And, I think the nurses are feeling that they're not under as much pressure as they used to be, and that somebody's listening to them, and if they've got an idea, they can come forward, and there's a place to share that and you know, to take that forward. We've got the monthly GPN leadership primary care meetings, and those digital champions, we're just building it and saying, you know, come along, join that forum, share your ideas, and come up with new ones as well. I've just shown you the video of that. So, you know, Stephanie is really keen on putting her appointments online. She sees a huge benefit for that, and her tips are, you know, make sure that they're labelled properly, because people say, oh, patients will book themselves into the wrong slot or something. But she said, you know, name it appropriately, and people will access it in the right way. And, you know, she says, go to your practice manager, you know, tell them about what you want to do. Don't wait for your kind of GPs or your practice manager to say, we're going to do this now. Be the ones that have that voice, that go forward and say, I want my appointments online. Can we try it? Just try it with a few. You know, some are pretty fail-safe. If you put your cytology ones on, you know, you're hardly going to book to go for a smear unless you really kind of have to. So, you know, be choosy. You know, choose the ones where you think patients can't get it wrong, and go from there. Appointments, again, it's, you know, when you phone the surgery, you're often faced with a care navigator or a receptionist who will ask you 50,000 questions around why you want to see a doctor or what your problem is. Online appointments, it's anonymised, you know, you choose what you want, book it in, and it's making a huge difference. Patients are going to the right place at the right time for what they need. And, you know, you can do it 24/7. You don't have to all be on the phone at 8:30 in the morning, you know, in a huge queue waiting for the receptionist. You can book your appointment when you want. Stephanie's a great advocate for nurse appointments online. Repeat prescriptions as well. Same thing, you know, you don't have to remember to drop your prescription off. You can do it on a Sunday afternoon, and, you know, it's just huge benefits to all this online technology. She's put 9 quick wins up. I won't go through it. I'll share these slides with you. But, you know, it is about promoting these services to your patients. Tell them about the online availability that's there. We're doing quite well about getting online appointments for general practice and GPs, but we want more nurses to have their appointments online as well. There's no reason that they can't. So we'd like you all to go away today and go to your practice managers and say, please, can I have my appointments on there? Put up posters in your waiting room, tell people about it. You know, it's like everything. We sometimes implement technology and then forget to tell people about it and forget to tell them that it's there. Put your posters up. One surgery as well has got a great patient participation group as well that's running virtually as well. And, you know, the attendance and the participation in that is, you know, immense now. It gives everybody a greater voice. So include in your patient letters reminders that online appointments are available and anything else. So please do promote it. Digital Nurse Network. Stephanie's a member of this, as are a lot of nurses, and it's that safe space for nurses to come together to share information, support each other, and, you know, really kind of feel a community outside of their own practice. So get involved, and it's going back to what Angie was saying, you know, be there for each other as well. So if anybody's got any questions, I'll happily talk to you. It's a fantastic opportunity this afternoon. We've got a digital champion one of our workshops this afternoon, and I know that I did ask you all which workshop you would like to go to, and where possible I did slot you into the right one, but I took a little bit of a liberty, and the practices where I knew you didn't have a digital champion, it's a huge opportunity to come and start that ALS journey. So there'll be a follow-up session, And it's about, you know, starting that being a digital champion from today and joining that community of digital champions that we've already got. So we've got more than 50 at the moment. If we get another 25 today, that is huge. And that momentum that we've got now across Lancashire and South Cumbria, and you know, being able to bring some of these new ideas and for you to work together is fantastic. So I hope that, you know, if you weren't just in the workshop you wanted to, you'll take that opportunity today, because it's there to be grabbed, really. So thank you. We're ahead of time. Yes, Declan. Yeah, we have now. I've caught up marvellously.
Thank you. Just because we've got a bit of time, don't go away. I just wondered, very, very rarely I get a chance to speak to so many nurses, frontline staff in one go. And I genuinely are interested to know your experiences and what things will make a difference. So as a system, I've put a case forward for significant investment in technology on the basis that whatever we try and do, we can't knit nurses on doctors. We need to find a way to supplement the work you're doing. It would be great if we could find more nurses. And then maybe we will do, but it'll still take a number of years to come through. So what could we do around the digital technology to make your lives better, or to come up with things that would make, oh, hand up already, well done. Do you want the, sorry? Wi-Fi, brilliant. Whereabouts are you based? In Leyland, fantastic. So, sorry, what was your name? Jane. Jane, did you say? Yeah. Jane was saying Wi-Fi, and I've heard that before. So there's a new network going in, and it's being rolled out to all the practices. Every practice is getting a 100-fold increase in how much capacity they have for the network. And we need to make sure that those practices that are actively engaged in a digital agenda get those Wi-Fi things, because there's no point doing all this stuff with patients if they can't access the infrastructure that you need. Now, one of the things I said about a voice is I know that we've got Wi-Fi, but somebody puts a limit on it in the IT department, and I'm kind of going, why did you do that? And how did you decide to do that? And all that kind of thing. So we need to break that chain. So Wi-Fi is being upgraded. There's a whole programme of work. We're spending £4 million this year. So anybody else want to add anything else? Oh, great. Hey, we're onto something here. Mobile computers. Tablets? No, computers. Computers. With the chip in, which has Wi-Fi. Yeah. You mean these kind of things that have a keyboard? Is that what you mean?
They're the computers, the laptops.
Yeah.
That,
like that?
Yeah. Similar to that, yeah.
Yeah. Something that's small.
Well, they're the usual sized laptops that we can take with us, and doctors can work from, and physicians can work from home.
Yeah.
And work can be done mobile.
So,
but it needs also the chip in that we can access Wi-Fi.
Brilliant.
If there's no Wi-Fi out there.
Yeah, so a SIM. Yeah, like your mobile phone, that kind of thing.
SIM.
So yeah, Anne's got a network, and hopefully more of you will join that network of people who we go to and ask our sages in primary care. And I have what's called the George Dingle test. Anybody from Garstang? Yep. So the George Dingle, what a wonderful man, isn't he? If we ever have a problem, we roll out George, and he goes in and he just woos them all. Advice and guidance, he's the man. Anyway, the George Dingle test is, I'll know it works for you when George can sit on his kitchen table. He lives out in the sticks, doesn't he? Yeah. And if he can work on his kitchen table and do what he needs to do, God knows why they don't eat at the kitchen table, but if he can do what he needs to do, so that's a big ask. And again, one of the things Anne and I want to try and do is we've got a whole raft of new equipment going out. I want you to have a say in what that equipment is and where it goes. Now, I did talk to the PCNs about the clinical networks directors, and they were a bit, we've got a lot on. And I went, yeah, I understand that. So I need to find a way that raises that voice. Okay? Anybody else want to add to the list? Now's your chance. Now, do you work in Lancashire and South Cumbria?
No, but I'm going to ask you a question. So, does your local technology then fit into the national technology? So I'm thinking in particular, the NHS app has just been launched, of which I'm using. I live in the Midlands, and I registered with the NHS app, and now I can access my GP surgery in the Midlands. How is that different to what you're creating locally, and will the two eventually come together?
Yes. We use pretty much an iPlato. Does that mean anything to people? Yeah. Again, I'll just add that there was only 4 appointments on mine, and just before Christmas. I'd love to be able to do more on there. So we use a thing called iPlato. Now, there is this national NHS app, and I've also got access to that as well. At the moment, so iPlato's getting video. You can be able to video a patient or video with a patient. That's coming out, and the ability to capture. So if you want to do some form of health assessment with a patient, that functionality is coming out in the next few weeks. So the video's just there being tested. I think maybe some people in the room are testing it, possibly. But what we've got there has more in it than in the NHS app. So my understanding is that some of the practices don't want to go back to the NHS app. So what we're going to try and do, because we've got to roll out the NHS app, is use that as the front door to get into the app. Okay? So and there's when any of you use the NHS app, you have to declare who you are and say how much your mortgage is or something like that. Yeah. Well, I did. But no. But you have to go through an accreditation. Now, the reason for that, and the reason that is actually a good thing, I don't think that's a bad thing, because it says that I'm Declan and I can access other things. So in addition to iPlato, and the reason why the NHS app is important is because we've just rolled out a tool for risk-stratified breast cancer follow-up. So in secondary care, we're bringing on a way for patients to have an online tool. They can get information, they can manage aspects of their care, they can say they need to have a follow-up appointment. And that's first one is breast cancer, that's going out now. There's one for colorectal cancer, and then there's a few other cancers after that. Then we've got one for children coming on, and all that will be linked in to the apps that you use in primary care. So those things will be seamlessly linked, and the NHS app will be the way to do that. Crikey, you need a prize of some sort.
It's a question for yourself and Karen, actually. I get frustrated about the lack of communication between different organisations, and the biggest barrier is everybody uses a different system. I think, and I have thought for years and years and years, the only people that can influence that are either NHSE or the Department of Health, that make it that when we commission services that we all use the same systems, that we have one system for our patients, and instead of we spend millions and millions and millions on how to link the two things together.
Do you work in IT?
No.
I'd agree. It's frustrating. I think a lot of it stems back to who's the system for. So it's taken a long time for GP practices as independent contractors to agree to using one system. That's one part of the jigsaw. Then we've got hospitals using another system, and actually getting our patients to agree to sharing data and information is even more of a challenge. And actually a recent challenge that I've just come across within primary care networks is sharing information. I think there's still a reluctance and a fear for people around sharing information, whether that has patient sensitive implications or not. So I think you're absolutely right in raising that point, and I think what you have got in your region and I've already seen this morning, is the opportunity to call things out and say, you know, these are real challenges. You know, those conversations need to be had around why can't we share things? What's the real risk behind it? And then eventually, perhaps there will be one system. But at the moment, each part of the jigsaw has their own system. And I don't think NHS England or NHS Improvement can actually influence that at the moment, or NHSX, when, you know, that with their new, the new organisation that leads all the digital work, you know, whether that's something that they can influence in the future, we'll probably see. But at the moment, it is all a fragmented system.
There's not really an app. There's a thing called the National Programme a few years ago. You may have heard of it. There's not really an appetite to have a single system nationally. However, Talib and I will both, because Talib and I have had lots of conversations about how do we have less systems and make them better integrated. I'm not sure we'll get to one in any time soon, but we should have less. So we're talking to all the hospitals, and this is heresy. And the first time I mentioned it, if there'd have been some rope in the room, there'd have been a hanging, was why don't we have one hospital system? And we're on that journey. We're just starting it now. In primary care, you've got one system, pretty much. But even that doesn't work quite so good, because if you're in a PCN, you can't really share records across different practices. So there's problems that need to overcome. On the record share, so there's something called LPRES that some of you may or may not be familiar with. To try and solve the current problem, we're linking systems together. So in primary care, you don't really see it because all the information goes straight into the EMIS record. But if you were in a hospital, you can log into LPRES, I'll come second, and you can see all the records that organisations have published in the system that you're using. So you can see if a letter's been produced by East Lancs in Lancashire Teaching Hospitals, that kind of thing. And then the final thing is that Office 365 that I talked to you about. We get the agreement in place. We will be able to set up a way for you to share your information, documents, policies, things like that, seamlessly with each other within a primary care network. What I'm saying to our IT leaders is we want to set this up once, not lots of times, because how do you know a mobile worker in Lancashire and South Cumbria, an agile worker? I'll tell you how. They've generally got a bad back, and they walk around with a briefcase, like one of them flight bags, and they have a laptop for that organisation and a laptop for that organisation. We've got to stop all that stupidity. And I'm saying the way to do that is primary care. Sorry, lady at the back. Just want to hold on to the lady. Come on, Layla, faster.
Just thinking about the cyber attack of however many years ago and how your security systems has been upgraded to accommodate that with all this technology that we're going to.
We spent millions on cyber security in this system. We were very, very badly hit, as many of you will remember. I do, because I didn't sleep for a few days because we were on doing a thing, you know, like a command centre. We've got individual organisations have been bolstering their security, and the Office 365 that I talked about is moving some of that information that we're going to be using in the future into a cloud-based service, so we become less dependent on the infrastructure that we control and manage inside the system. A lot of the cyber stuff that we need to do, we've done technically. What we need to now focus on is people being, you know, not clicking on links in emails and things like that. So there's been lots happening, and there's a lot more to do. I'm a real advocate of our cyber people working together, because we haven't got a lot of them. When we talk about clinically fragile services, we've got lots of technically fragile services. So there aren't there many people doing these kind of things. So just coming back to your day-to-day, what kind of things are going to make a difference to you from a technology perspective? So we've talked about Wi-Fi equipment. Oh, sorry, yes.
Immunisations.
Yeah.
You know, that's quite frustrating that there's different organisations, like you've got your Health who do the immunisations for children's schools. They then send the information to Child Health. Then the record's supposed to come to us. And it just seems very complicated because often the records don't come through to us. And we're always trying to find and chase up and ring to find out, has this child been immunised? Whereas, is there not a central database that we could have, that if we have got a child coming from a new area or wherever, we could see what vaccinations they've had, rather than having to ring different organisations, oh, we haven't got the record yet, maybe they have. And, you know, sometimes you might miss a child's vaccinations, or you might be vaccinated unnecessarily.
Do you know, that's a really good idea. And do you know what? The timing for that's brilliant, because the tender for the Child Health Immunisation Service is just out at the moment. And actually, it's been out, but they've put it back out. I'm going to speak to them about writing that in and putting it into the shared care record. So that's a really good idea, that. Really, really good idea. You need to keep an eye. Have you? Brilliant. Well done. So what was your name? We'll call it the Heather procedure, or the Heather diktat that we'll be saying to people, you've got to comply with that, Heather. Okay. So what kind of other things are you going to... Printing... do you use patients, do you have patients coming in? So I've got my own genomic record. I don't know if you know that, and I don't think it would probably blow the mind of my GP to say, yeah, I know I've got a 28% chance of dementia by the time I reach 85. Do you really accept, do you actively work with patients? Are you giving them equipment, or are you encouraging them to do their own testing, anything like that? Anybody interested in that? Microphone.
Giving patients the equipment to be able to send you the information, some sort of scheme. I know it's not totally digital, but if they haven't got the equipment, they can't send you the information that you can do a video.
Absolutely right.
So
whereabouts do you work?
In Longton.
Longton, okay. Have you heard of, do you know Janet Davis? Have you met Janet? Have you heard of the work they've done in Morecambe Bay with a company called Docabo? And what they've done is, and they do it on the Fylde Coast as well, and we want to roll it out actually into Preston, where we give patients, they can have a Fitbit, or they can have a pulse oximeter, or something like that, or scales, digitally connected scales. So there's some people doing that. Would you want to see more of that?
Yeah.
Would you like to be a pioneer?
We're part of a PCN, so that might be something our PCN can take on as well.
And my experience of that is most of the patients love it. They love it.
We'll be a pioneer.
Say again, sorry.
So we'll be a pioneer.
There you go. I've got that down. Well done. See, now's the chance. You're getting the idea here that it's your chance to come up and say, oh, right. Dementia. Got loads of things we can do for dementia. This is a real good workout for Layla.
So we're here from a research angle. So we've got our joint dementia research kiosk here, which is kind of all in our research active practices. But I was wondering about the use of VR tech and the potential for like pulmonary rehab, among other things as well, for anxiety and depression, perhaps. Yeah,
we've actually got some VR headsets that we're looking to work with practices on. There's a GP in, anybody here from Barrow? Farhan, do you know Farhan? So Farhan Amin, he's a GP in Barrow. He's been doing some work around pulmonary rehabilitation using headsets. We've got some other people using them for other types of rehabilitation. And there's a real, the equipment is coming down in price now. You could almost see a scenario, if we can find, the demand, a headset in every practice where you're doing therapy sessions. You could actually think about doing group sessions with headsets, lend them out to people, and you go on a journey together. So I'm up for that. In terms of dementia, sorry, did you say that was dementia's your? Yeah. These kind of things here can have a massive impact on people who are going down that dementia journey, in terms of their disease and how it's progressing. There's all sorts of stuff that they can do. I was talking to any of you from Blackburn, Mike Wedgworth, who works there, deacon of the cathedral. He was saying about an elderly lady in his parish, and He was looking for a way to help this elderly lady. He was quite isolated and was functioning reasonably well, but needed some additional support. And they bought one of these for her. And it actually, gives people a chance to listen to music, all sorts of different things. But actually it can remind them to do general tasks. So there's some real simple technology, and I'm a real advocate of simple technology to do some really powerful things.
Could I just ask, I believe that there are a lot of technology already out there. We use Docman 10, we use AccuRx at our surgery, or I'm saying we use it. Our problem is we don't have the training on it, and we don't have the time to have the training.
Do you think that, just looking around the room, do you think that training should be done by somebody who comes in, or are there people in general practice who are willing to help and train others? So I have a bit of a view about, we can bring trainers in, and the CSU, for Community Support Unit, provides training, but actually I think sometimes there are and the practice managers and others in your practice will be experts in some things. How do we make time for you to share and learn? Because actually getting somebody who's just showing you working from a script is one way of doing it. Maybe a better way of doing it is to supplement that with actual experienced users who are practically applying it day to day. Would you?
We're all talking about things up here,
with
whatever they're called.
This?
Whatever they are, yeah.
That's Alexa.
I think a lot of the things we can streamline things in a consultation. So information for patients that will link into your consultation within EMIS, and what information you've given them on that day and how they can, and a lot of the things you can give them an app to look at, but is it documented? Because you spend forever documenting a consultation and information you've given.
So one of the things I'm interested in looking, and not this, it doesn't matter which flavour, there are other types of personal assistant on the market. I just happen to like this one because it's good with Christmas lights. You can imagine you're in practice and you've seen a patient and you say, I've just seen Declan, and you say, Alexa, tell Declan, update Declan's record with a health and social needs assessment, or a diabetes assessment, and I've given him some dietary information and all that. And imagine if that went into EMIS directly. That is possible. But we need to work together. AccuRx, yeah.
I mean, only yesterday, one of the GPs said, I do this and I do that and I do that, and looked at us all as though, why aren't you all doing it?
Yeah.
And it's that's the frustration.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've been here forever with every computer system, everything. And I mean, I think EMIS is really good, but I think we can do more, but it's knowing what more we can do with.
So I'm really keen with that. The great thing about having Anne on the team is it's some dedicated time and support to create a network of people. We do need to put training in.
If you've just got an issue that you just...
Yeah, a network where you can call on. One of the things we are keen to do is to find people who are willing to put, maybe you've thinking about retiring or whatever it is, hopefully you won't, but maybe you're thinking I could spend a day a week doing something differently, or I could bring about some change. That's what we're all about, and the programme.
Oh, what you don't know?
No.
What you should, I don't know what that meant.
So we've got... right, okay, yeah, 3 minutes. Yes, you go ahead, then we'll come on. You get the last word. Make it a good one.
My question might be a bit way in the future, but you were talking about people not wanting to share information, not wanting to have a seamless system nationally. And I was just thinking, when you're born, why can't we, this may be way in the future,
no.
Why can't we? So I joined UCLAN and I got an email for UCLAN, and that has all my information on it, and I'm taking responsibility for a lot of what I have to do. Is there not some way that we can have a seamless system that involves the patient, and therefore we can all share information with that,
So
that
you-
is mandatory?
Do you work in IT?
No.
You should
I've
do.
just got a very IT. So
You should do. The secret, the way to make this work is to centre it around the patient. The breast cancer programme, which I haven't got really time to go into, just gives you a glimpse of how that might work.
If we were all given an NHS email,
Yeah.
then we could all... Yeah, as an NHS
Yeah.
number.
So there's already a piece of work we're doing with maternity systems, and there's something called the Red Book, Digital Red Book. You're starting to see glimpses of this, and the future is exactly as you described it.
I mean, from birth to death.
But we all need to be prepared to change to do that. We're just going to run out of time, so Georgina, and then I'll come over to the lady over here. No, Layla, you missed one out.
I just want to say, Declan, I'm not really a sort of techie person, and you have actually enthused me about digital stuff. So first of all, I think that's a massive thing. But I was just thinking on what you just said about, how do I find out how to do this? My kids, the first thing they'll do is search up a YouTube video. So if you had YouTube videos saying, nurses, this is how you do X, this is how you do Y. That would actually be really an easy way of giving people training, because training is changing so much. It's not, a lot of training now is just YouTube videos. The other thing I wanted to just say is, because I know some people might come to our group consultations workshop this afternoon, and one of the things I think is really important is getting patients to do things for themselves. So when we're doing group consultations training, often clinicians say, well, how am I going to document 12 patients? And so what some of the sort of practices that are moving forward and thinking about their next steps now they've given group consultations a go is, well, what I'll do is I'll get the patient to fill out their own records with key metrics that are going to be discussed at the group consultation, which will prompt them to sign up for the digital, which there's all kinds of targets around, isn't there? Accessing your record and stuff. And then in their group consultation, they can write their own kind of notes about what their learnings are. They can set their outcomes. And by the end of the group consultation, they'll have almost updated their record, and the clinician can just check what the patient's written and done. So, exciting, #exciting.
And I know a lot of you have been on Georgina's group consultations already, and some will do this afternoon, but I see it really moving into that digital space and those opportunities to deliver group consultations.
What we'll do, Georgina, is with some of the changes that are coming on, we haven't got time to talk about them all. One of my things is to empower you to be able to use digital differently and stop you having to go through an IT department, a service desk. You just give up. It's too complicated. You're too busy. You've got too many patients. I'm agreeing.
Can I just say, I think the lady that actually said, within my practices, there's one person using a system and asking why isn't everybody else using that? I think we need to go back to basics and actually have a conversation in our practices around what are we doing as a team to embrace digital technology. I mean, those conversations have got to happen in practice teams if we're to use one system. So we can all do that. We can all have a conversation in our practice about why can't we share it.
We're getting so many digital champions across the board, and and it is about everybody being a leader in their own teams and their own areas, and for you to go back to your practice and do some of this work.
We really have to make the technology work for you and support those conversations. So, sorry, what's your name?
I'm Tracy.
Tracy, you get the last word. Well, nearly the last word.
It was really more around equipment that could help us in practice to make our jobs a bit quicker. It's around, this is particularly for us around the baby clinics. We're a massive practice with 17,000 patients, so we have a lot of children coming in. And we've said for a long time, is there no way we could have a barcode scanner that could link vaccinations to the computer, so all those batch numbers, the usual stuff, we're not having to document for England on every single vaccine.
So you don't have that kind of thing already?
We were told we couldn't, there was no equipment available for
We need to find these people who say you couldn't, don't we, and put them up against a wall. Okay, that is definitely something that's doable. There's a standard called GS1, and all the hospitals are working on that. So it's not like something, you've not invented something, but you've thought about how you could apply it. So that's something we need to take away. So we've run out of time. I will say one last thing. Sorry, Tracy, you're not going to get the last word. I've got the mic. Whatever technology can do, it can't hold your hand when you're in crisis. Never forget that technology only supplements what you're all doing day to day. Thank you.
Okay. So lunch is through where you had your coffee earlier on. If you can go to your assigned workshop at 1 o'clock promptly, that'd be really helpful. So the digital champions will be in here at 1 o'clock, and the group consultations and the IMS and VACs are in Eccleston Suite 1 and 2. And it would be really helpful if you did go to the workshop that's you're listed for. I'd be really grateful. And please don't forget the awards later on. We've had a tremendous amount of applications, nominations, and, you know, it is really good to share some of that as well. So please do stay for this afternoon. Just for the live stream viewers, we'll take a break now and we'll be back at 1 o'clock in here with Digital Champions. Thank you all and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.